Good morning to everybody out there. Didn't think we would have this day so soon. In fact, somebody I spoke to earlier in the year said they did not expect hearings this year. And I kind of thought they were right, but I was wrong, and I'm glad to be wrong. And I'm going to try to pull up, hopefully, the page pulls up well here. If not, obviously, you should have the YouTube page open on your own. Since 1963, this is the first time for hearings. Sorry, just getting my stuff together. Share. I'm not going to be as polished. I'm sure there's some very polished live streams going on right now. But let me pull in the. So there it is. Let me get it full screen. Well, there's no full screen yet. So. What's up, Paul? Hi, pro illusionist. And Jack. I have, and as far as I'm not going to make any predictions. I know people, and I don't know what questions are going to be asked. One of the good questions I thought, they've blacked out the shapes of UFOs in some of the documents that have come out, and the person who is responsible for setting the security clarifications is not Moultrie. It is the other gentleman, which I am drawing a blank on, which we will see. Hopefully they ask him the question, why are the shapes of these objects, redacted? And for me, the only reason I can think of, which they may say, is, well, since we don't know what these objects are, to be careful, we're going to just to be safe, just in case it's a black project, we'll black out the shape. You're welcome, Jolene. I'm glad to do this. Wish it was a little later, but at this point, I couldn't care less. We're up, we're here. We have no idea what to expect. I mean, if you read Bryan Bender's article yesterday, he talked about possibly, giving folks a reason to speak out, folks in these programs. And of course, the first thing I think of is amnesty as a possibility. I don't know what else they can offer them to get them to come forward. Good morning, Kick Rocks 88. Thanks for being here. One of the things I said last night is they could, and Bender spoke about this in his article, they could have these folks. And one of the things I forgot about it last night. One of the things I've been complaining about is just because something is classified should not prevent a congressman or senator from coming out and saying, listen, I watched this video and this object was making a 90-degree turn, or whatever they saw. So they should be able to talk about that. And in Bender's article, he's suggesting that may happen with folks who are in these programs who have seen some amazing data, that they can't show you the data at this point, which I think is bullshit. But they can talk about it. And for now, that would be okay. Obviously, we want to see videos. Videos are the most important thing with audio, from the pilots. Somebody talking about it, say 3 people saw it and they came up in front of Congress and they described it, that would be great. But that's not enough. And we know we all want to see the 23-minute video and whatever other video they have. And as much as I believe there's amazing video out there and evidence, we haven't seen it. So, and I understand that side when people get frustrated and they finally give up and I've seen people become debunkers because they're like, nothing is coming forward. Nothing is happening. I understand. So let's see what happens in the next year or so. If we don't get any video, it's going to be very frustrating. And UFO Jesus, Ryan, post-disclosure world, he suggested, eventually we're going to have to say, if nothing comes out, they don't have anything, but I don't think that's the case. Let's see what happens. We have to have something new in the next year, something that really catches the attention of the general population, which we really don't have. I mean, they know about this and they're going to hear about it more, but you know what I'm talking about. there are roundtables on other live streams that should be taking place on ABC and NBC, and they should be talking about, they should be showing the hearing room live, but they're not doing that. We're doing that. So once you see that happening, then you'll see we're making, in my opinion, we're making progress. And if you have any questions beforehand, like I said, I don't know what's going to happen. Hopefully the stream works here and you guys will be able to hear it okay. I should just make sure I have audio with the stream. 1 second. Share. Yep, audio's there. So let's hope everything works. I was trying it last night and it was hiccuping a little bit. It's 9 a.m. in Western Australia. Well, it's gonna be 6 o'clock here in Vegas, and it's hot. It's a little prematurely hot for this time of the year. But I have grown used to it. Yet to hear a discussion how everyone having phone cameras, why there isn't more spectacular video. Yeah, that's been discussed by plenty of people. I think, who was the one big time skeptic? It might have been Neil deGrasse Tyson, who this morning is in his rare form talking about, I should pull up some of his tweet from this morning. I don't want to get off of that page. I'll tell you, I'll read what Neil deGrasse Tyson tweeted. He said, I'm thinking that if space aliens were actively visiting Earth from across the galaxy, we would not need congressional hearings to establish this fact. Just saying. Yeah, okay. First of all, we don't know if they're space aliens. Second of all, you're assuming they want to be known. Big assumption. And as far as camera, phones and everything, well, that assumes, if you believe the 5 observables, one of them is, low observability. They're not really easy to capture. But from what I've heard, we have some amazing stuff. Our satellites pick up stuff. Other countries, great. I do want to see it. So if we don't see it the next year, I think you will have a major pushback from people in this field. I mean, we're here now. We have hearings. There's no reason why they can't start releasing videos. You're welcome, Greg. Julian, did they submit questions to the 2 officials? I don't know if they did or not. I hope not. Unless there's some stuff that they needed research on before they could answer. I want them. And somebody last night brought up the possibility. They asked me if I thought crash retrievals were going to be not discussed. Somebody said, you think they'll be explored? I forget what the wording was, but I do think there may be a question about crash retrievals, but these are not the guys that are going to give us those answers. If that ever happens, we first need to get amnesty and then folks who have worked in these programs to come out and speak and not worry about any security clearances. If they could speak saying, a couple of them say, yeah, we have an intact craft from 1947, something like that. I see no reason why they can't show pictures of it. So we have a picture now. We have a picture. The House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. And remember, this is just the House. The Senate is really what we want. No offense to the House, but you got Rubio, Gillibrand, and all of those folks in the Senate. So, and the chat is disabled for this live stream. I don't know why they did that, but plenty of places the chat. Get ready for them to talk on the Zero Creator. I don't know what that is. Sorry. There's a lot of things I don't know. As I brought up last night, a friend of mine who I worked with on Golden Knights hockey, he brought up Skinny Bob to me. It was a couple of years ago, and for somebody who's been in this field for a long time, you would think I knew who Skinny Bob was. I didn't. Now I'm like, oh yeah, Skinny Bob. He's the guy that he's the AI alien. He looks AI to me, if that's even real. How the hell do I know? I'm not a video analyst, even though I work in television. UFO Pancake, unmute yourself. Oh, there you are. Yeah, you can unmute yourself. We got 3 minutes if you want to say a word or two. I don't know if you were prepared, but you're there. You just have to unmute yourself. And I guess I have to put headphones on, put the volume up. Do you think they will admit to the... I don't know. I need to know what the is. I'm going to put headphones on too. You guys should have your own YouTube stream going too, because I don't know if this is gonna lag. Last night it looked like it was lagging a little bit. I wonder if you can tell how many people are watching. You should be able to on the YouTube page. Let's see. 6,400, 6,600 right now. That's okay. I'm sure there are other places to watch, but you would think if we ever had critical mass or enough people were interested, it would be, I mean, you would hope millions of people. I'm not sure the system could handle that. Do you think there's a chance, and I will remove UFO Pancake. I don't think he's ready. Do you think there's a chance they will at least admit to the sightings not being foreign tech? That's what our representatives need to push. They need to say, in your best professional judgment, do you think some of these are Russian or Chinese? And it'll be interesting to see what they say to that, because I'm assuming they're going to say, well, we can't rule out anything. You know, that's a possibility. If they say we have ruled out foreign tech, I would think it would be the story of the week at the very least. You never know with our media. Sometimes they surprise us and they cover the hell out of something, and then sometimes they ignore something like the Gillibrand Amendment was all but ignored because nobody knows about that. I ask people, I'm like, did you know we have a UFO office? Like, no. So yeah, I don't know if they'll admit that. And we have a countdown. And folks who have called in, you need to use it. Chrome is one way to do it. Otherwise, it will not come through. You're not going to be able to use like Safari. You got to try different browsers, because in my error message, it says device is not connected. I'm going to grab my I was going to grab my phone. I may disappear during the stream. I'll be listening, but I won't be on camera. I mean, there's really not much more to say. I could speculate, 66, I think, was the last time we had open hearings on UFOs from a committee. And that was related to Gerald Ford, congressman out of Michigan. And, he wanted to get to the bottom of sightings that were going on there. And the end was, it was swamp gas. That's where the infamous swamp gas explanation came from, which it pissed him off. I think that's why he had hearings. I am by no means an expert on 66 and Gerald Ford, but he's one president who showed interest. Norway. Good morning to all Americans. It's 3 p.m. in Norway, so I've had to wait for hours already. Yeah, I mean, I have been to Norway. 2000, I think it was 2000 or 2001. I went to Oslo and Bergen, and another small town where my girlfriend at the time, her mom lived. So welcome. I actually was going to move there and learn Norwegian. That would have been very challenging. The unbreakable taboo that no official will break. We know the United States government has been covering up the reality that we are being visited by extraterrestrial life. Yeah, I don't know if we're being visited by extraterrestrial life. I think we're being interacted with by something not of any government on this planet. Whether or not it's non-human, I still don't know that. Could be that it's a mix of things, including extraterrestrial life, but I don't know that. And it could be a breakaway civilization. It could be us from the future, just admitting that we don't know what this is. And the conclusion is it's 100% anomalous that's the next step. You're not going to get them talking. I don't think they're going to admit to anything extraterrestrial. I'm not even sure they have evidence that it's extraterrestrial. As I talked about in the past, I tweeted, and last night somebody who posted on Facebook who has access to some data said, no, as far as he has seen, there is no extraterrestrial data that shows they're coming from another planet. That data may exist, but they hadn't seen it. Maybe it's buried at a higher classification level and clearance than he had. I think most people know who that is. I'm just trying to respect the Facebook page where it was said. Secret. It's secret. It's not really secret. Thanks for doing this. Wouldn't have known about the hearing if it hadn't. Oh, really? Greetings from Ireland. Calm. Great, great. I'm glad. I'm glad I did this. Glad to have you along, Calm. So you live in Bergen. Yeah, it was nice. I liked Bergen. Took a train from Oslo, and I will try to do more videos. I really suck at videos. I'm on Twitter nonstop, which I like because I can think about what I try to, my points. I could take time to really think about what I say. Here, it's just say it as you go, and then the next morning you're like, oh, did I say that last night? That was not accurate. The Netherlands in the house. That is impressive. We got Norway, Ireland, and the Netherlands. And Switzerland. I don't think I've had this many international folks, and I love international folks. Canadians are my favorites because when I worked in hockey, the people you work with, the directors, and everybody's so nice. Sweden, I did go to Sweden. I went to Stockholm, which was beautiful. So welcome to all you guys. Here we go.
Threat in both open and closed hearings. It is utterly devastating to see more victims of this violence. Buffalo, my heart breaks for you.
You guys hearing an echo? Just let me know how the audio is.
With that, I ask my colleagues to join, pardon me, we will now turn to the business of this hearing.
No audio?
More than 50 years ago, the U.S. government ended Project Blue Book,
Okay.
an effort to catalog and understand sightings of objects in the air that could not otherwise be explained. For more than 20 years, that project had treated unidentified anomalies in our airspace as a national security threat to be monitored and investigated. In 2017, we learned for the first time that the Department of Defense had quietly restarted a similar organization tracking what we now call unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs. Last year, Congress rewrote the charter for that organization, now called the Airborne Object Identification and Management Synchronization Group, or AIM-SOG. For short, today we will bring that organization out of the shadows. This hearing and oversight work has a simple idea at its core. Unidentified aerial phenomena are a potential national security threat, and they need to be treated that way. For too long, the stigma associated with UAPs has gotten in the way of good intelligence analysis. Pilots avoided reporting or were laughed at when they did. DoD officials relegated the issue to the back room or swept it under the rug entirely, fearful of a skeptical national security community. Today, we know better. UAPs are unexplained, it's true, but they are real. They need to be investigated, and many threats they pose need to be mitigated. Under Secretary Moultrie, Mr. Bray, thank you for coming today. First, we need you to update us on the status of AIM-SOG. The legislation creating it was passed in December. The deadline for implementation is fast approaching, but the group does not even have a named director. We need to know, sirs, the status of the organization and the obstacle to getting it up and running. Secondly, you have to convince the audience today, and most especially our military and civilian aviators, the culture has changed. That those who report UAPs will be treated as witnesses, not as kooks. Thirdly, you need to show us, Congress, and the American public whose imaginations you have captured. You are willing to follow the facts where they lead. We fear sometimes that the DoD is focused more on emphasizing what it can explain, not investigating what it can't. I'm looking for you to assure us today that all conclusions are on the table. One final note, we are mindful today that AIM-SOG is not starting from scratch. This is the third version of this task force in DoD, and civil society groups like the Mutual UFO Network, Mr. Corbell and others have been collecting data on this issue for years. I hope you'll explain how you can leverage the knowledge and experience of our prior work on this matter to move the AIM-SOG along. The last time Congress had a hearing on UAPs was half a century ago. I hope that it does not take 50 more years for Congress to hold another because transparency is desperately needed. I now turn to Ranking Member Crawford for comments he'd like to make.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honorable Moultrie and Mr. Bray, thank you for coming here today. We appreciate it. To begin the open dialogue between Congress and the executive branch on this important topic. While this topic evokes creative imaginations of many, aside from all the hype and speculation, there are important underlying issues posed by UAPs. Despite the serious nature of this topic, I have to say I'm more interested in our understanding of Chinese and Russian hypersonic weapon development, or understanding why this administration was so slow to share actionable intelligence with the Ukrainians. However, inasmuch as this topic may help us better understand unknown activities of Russia and China, I am on board. The intelligence community has a serious duty to our taxpayers to prevent potential adversaries such as China and Russia from surprising us with unforeseen new technologies. As overseers of the intelligence community, this committee has an obligation to understand what you are doing to determine whether any UAPs are new technologies or not. And if they are, where are they coming from? In general, the IC spends much of its time and resources trying to understand what we call known unknowns. When it comes to foreign nations' weapons systems and sensors, known unknowns are those features that we don't fully understand yet. The challenge associated with UAP is that they are completely unknown and require a more expansive collection and analysis effort. The intelligence community must balance addressing known threats to our national security with preventing technical surprise. We must continue to follow the facts where they lead us and ensure that there are no technical surprises. The IC must take it seriously when there are credible observations of phenomena that seem to perform in ways that could pose a threat to safe flight operations, or that could be signs of a foreign adversary's attempt to develop a strategic technological surprise against the United States. It's also essential that our pilots and others feel they can report UAPs they observe without any stigma for doing so. This is the open, unclassified portion of our hearing. We'll have a closed, classified part later. It's important for the public to know that the classification of information exists to protect national security, not to try to hide the truth. When we're trying to determine if any UAPs are new technologies being developed by foreign governments, we are inevitably going to run into classified information about what new systems and technologies we do know are in the works here or abroad. But where information does not risk national security, it should be shared with our allies and the public when feasible. I hope that we can have your assurance to this end today. It's my hope that the intelligence community will continue to try to determine the nature of UAPs we've observed, and will keep Congress fully apprised of all developments. I look forward to this hearing and continue dialogue and oversight with the intelligence community on this topic. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back, and now I will turn to our distinguished chairman, Adam Schiff, for any comments he wishes to make.
Thank you, Chairman Carson, for holding this open hearing on unidentified aerial phenomenon and for your leadership on this issue. Holding a portion of our discussion today in open session is critical to the cause of transparency and openness, which was Congress's intent in authorizing and funding this new task force. The larger effort that is being undertaken to study and characterize UAP reports is an important step towards understanding these phenomenon, what we know and don't know. And I look forward to hearing more during both the open session and the closed setting about how DOD and the IC are undertaking that task. UAP reports have been around for decades, and yet we haven't had an orderly way for them to be reported without stigma and to be investigated. That needs to change. UAP reports need to be understood as a national security matter, and that message needs to go out across DOD, the IC, and the whole of the U.S. government. When we spot something we don't understand or can't identify in our airspace, it's the job of those we entrust with our national security to investigate and to report back. That is why it's important that we hold this open hearing for the public to hear directly from the Department of Defense on the steps it's taking to track, analyze, and transparently communicate the work that is being done on this issue. It is also the responsibility of our government and this panel to share as much as we can with the American people, since excessive secrecy only breeds distrust and speculation. I look forward to hearing how the UAP task force is being stood up, what challenges they still face, and how this committee can make sure the task force is able to shed light on one of the world's most enduring mysteries. I thank you gentlemen for your work, and be very interested to hear what you have to say. To me, among the most fascinating questions are these phenomena that we can measure. That is, instruments report there is something there. It is not the human eye confusing objects in the sky. There is something there measurable by multiple instruments, and yet it seems to move in directions that are inconsistent with what we know of physics or science more broadly. And that to me poses questions of tremendous interest and as well as potential national security significance. So we look forward to hearing what you're able to report to us today in open session. And I want to thank Chairman Carson again for his extraordinary leadership on this issue, and I yield back.
Chairman yields back. Thank you. With that, we will start our hearing. Under Secretary Moultrie, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Chairman Schiff, Committee Chairman Carson, Ranking Member Crawford, distinguished members of the subcommittee, it's a privilege to be here with you today to address your questions regarding unidentified aerial phenomenon, or UAP. I'm pleased to be joined by Mr. Scott Bray, the Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence, who will speak to the Navy's Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force, which laid the foundation for the efforts we will discuss today. First, I'd like to thank Congress for supporting the Department's UAP efforts. The NDAA for fiscal year 2022 has helped us to establish a dedicated office to oversee processes and procedures for the timely collection, processing, analysis, and reporting of UAP-related data. What are UAP? Put simply, UAP are airborne objects that, when encountered, cannot be immediately identified. However, it is the Department's contention that by combining appropriately structured collected data with rigorous scientific analysis, any object that we encounter can likely be isolated, characterized, identified, and if necessary, mitigated. We know that our service members have encountered unidentified aerial phenomena, and because UAPs pose potential flight safety and general security risks, we are committed to a focused effort to determine their origins. Our effort will include the thorough examination of adversarial platforms and potential breakthrough technologies, U.S. government or commercial platforms, allied or partner systems, and other natural phenomena. We also understand that there has been a cultural stigma surrounding UAP. Our goal is to eliminate the stigma by fully incorporating our operators and mission personnel into a standardized data gathering process. We believe that making UAP reporting a mission imperative will be instrumental to the effort's success. The Defense Intelligence and Security Enterprise provides real-time support to our warfighters and mission personnel across all domains. To optimize the department's UAP work, we are establishing an office within the Office of the Secretary of Defense. That office's function is clear: to facilitate the identification of previously unknown or unidentified airborne objects in a methodical, logical, and standardized manner. These goals will ensure that we are working closely with operational personnel on training and reporting requirements, developing data and intelligence requirements, standardizing and integrating processes and procedures for collection, operational surveillance, analysis, and reporting, leveraging our research and development capabilities to improve detection, characterization, and identification of UAPs, developing mitigating solutions and procedures, and identifying strategy and policy solutions. This effort will maximize collaboration and build upon already existing relationships with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the FAA, DHS, and the FBI. We are also committed to strong partnerships with the Department of Energy, NOAA, the DEA, NASA, and the national labs, and just as importantly, our international partners and allies. With regard to the importance of transparency, the department is fully committed to the principle of openness and accountability to the American people. However, we are also mindful of our obligation to protect sensitive sources and methods. Our goal is to strike that delicate balance, one that enables us to maintain the public's trust while preserving those capabilities that are vital to the support of our service personnel. In closing, the department is committed to this effort and welcomes the challenge. We thank you for your committed support and look forward to your questions.
Yeah, there wasn't really anything
Chairman Schiff, Chairman
great there.
Carson, Ranking Member Crawford, and committee members, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today to highlight the ongoing work of the Department of Defense regarding unidentified aerial phenomena. Since the early 2000s,
we have seen an increasing number of unauthorized and or unidentified aircraft or objects in military-controlled training areas and training ranges and other designated airspace. Reports of sightings are frequent and continuing. We attribute this increase in reporting to a number of factors, including our work to destigmatize reporting, an increase in the number of new systems such as quadcopters and unmanned aerial systems that are in our airspace, identification of what we can classify as clutter, mylar balloons, and other types of air trash, and improvements in the capabilities of our various sensors to detect things in our airspace. Almost 2 years ago, in August of 2020, Deputy Secretary of Defense Nordquist directed the establishment of the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force within the Department of the Navy. The UAP Task Force was built on the foundation of the Navy's initial efforts to respond to the reports from our aviators on unidentified objects observed in our training ranges. The basic issues then and now are twofold. First, incursions in our training ranges by unidentified objects represent serious hazards to safety of flight. In every aspect of naval aviation, safety of our air crews is paramount. Second, intrusions by unknown aircraft or objects pose potential threats to the security of our operations. Our aviators train as they would fight. So any intrusions that may compromise the security of our operations by revealing our capabilities, our tactics, techniques, or procedures are of great concern to the Navy and the Department of Defense. From the very beginning, we took these reports very seriously. We instituted a data-driven approach to the investigations where we could collect as much data as possible and use all available resources to analyze and make informed decisions on the best ways to address our findings. Our main objective was to transition UAP efforts from an anecdotal or narrative-based approach to a rigorous science and technology engineering-focused study. This data-driven approach requires input from a wide variety of sources. In the early stages, the task force worked to standardize the reporting mechanisms and processes to make it as easy as possible for personnel to report any engagement so that we were getting that wide range of reporting that we needed. We also spent considerable efforts engaging directly with our naval aviators and building relationships to help destigmatize the act of reporting sightings or encounters. And we worked with naval aviation leadership to provide additional equipment to record any encounter. Navy and Air Force crews now have step-by-step procedures for reporting on a UAP on their knee board in the cockpit and in their post-flight debrief procedures. The direct result of those efforts has been increased reporting with increased opportunities to focus a number of sensors on any objects. The message is now clear. If you see something, you need to report it. And the message has been received. In fact, recently, I received a call from a senior naval aviator with over 2,000 flight hours. He called me personally from the flight line after landing to talk about an encounter that he had just experienced. Those were just the initial steps. We also made a concerted effort to assemble subject matter experts from across the Department of Defense and the intelligence community and other U.S. government agencies and departments. We forged partnerships with the research, development, and acquisition communities, with industry partners, and with academic research labs, and we brought many allies and international partners into our discussions on UAP. Additionally, subject matter experts from a wide variety of fields, including physics, optics, metallurgy, meteorology, just to name a few, have been brought in to expand our understanding in areas where we may not have organic expertise. In short, we've endeavored to bring an all-hands-on-deck approach to better understand this phenomena. So what have we learned so far? Any given observation may be fleeting or longer. It may be recorded or not. It may be observable by one or multiple assets. In short, there's rarely an easy answer. For example, let me share with you the first video that we have here today, which shows an observation in real time. There it was. That's, in many cases, that's all that a report may include. And in many other cases, we have far less than this. As we detailed in both the unclassified and classified versions of the preliminary assessment released by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence last June, this often limited amount of high-quality data and reporting hampers our ability to draw firm conclusions about the nature or intent of UAP. As detailed in the ODNI report, if and when individual UAP incidents are resolved, they likely fall into one of 5 potential explanatory categories: airborne clutter, natural atmospheric phenomena, U.S. government or U.S. industry developmental programs, foreign adversary systems, or a other bin that allows for a holding bin of difficult cases and for the possibility of surprise and potential scientific discovery. We stand by those initial results. Since the release of that preliminary report, UAP Task Force database has now grown to contain approximately 400 reports. The stigma has been reduced. We've also made progress in resolving the character of a limited number of UAP encounters. For example, let me show you a couple of another video and image taken years apart in different areas. In this video, U.S. Navy personnel recorded what appears to be triangles, some flashing, recorded several years ago off the coast of the United States. This was recorded while the U.S. Navy ship observed a number of small unmanned aerial systems in the area. And importantly, the video was taken through night vision goggles with a single lens reflex camera. These remained unresolved for several years.
Is he going the Boca route? Let's see if he goes the Boca route. They remained unresolved. But now, I'm sensing he's going to try to explain this. I hope Jeremy's watching.
Several years later, and off a different coast, U.S. Navy personnel, again, in a swarm of unmanned aerial systems, and again through night vision goggles and an SLR camera, recorded this image. But this time, other U.S. Navy assets also observed unmanned aerial systems nearby. And we're now reasonably confident that these triangles correlate to unmanned aerial systems in the area. The triangular appearance is a result of light passing through the night vision goggles and then being recorded by an SLR camera. I don't mean to suggest that everything that we observe is identifiable, but but this is a great example of how it takes considerable effort to understand what we're seeing in the examples that we are able to collect. In this example, we accumulated sufficient data from 2 similar encounters from 2 different time periods in 2 different geographic areas to help us draw these conclusions. That's not always the case, though. We recognize that that can be unsatisfying or insufficient in the eyes of many. This is a popular topic in our nation, with various theories as to what these objects may be and where they originate. By nature, we are all curious and we seek to understand the unknown. And as a lifelong intelligence professional, I'm impatient. I want immediate explanations for this as much as anyone else. However, understanding can take significant time and effort. It's why we've endeavored to concentrate on this data-driven process to derive fact-based results. And given the nature of our business, national defense, we've had to sometimes be less forthcoming with information in open forums than many would hope. If UAP do indeed represent a potential threat to our security, then the capabilities, systems, processes, and sources we use to observe, record, study, or analyze these phenomena need to be classified at appropriate levels. We do not want potential adversaries to know exactly what we're able to see or understand, or how we come to the conclusions we make. Therefore, public disclosures must be carefully considered on a case-by-case basis. So what's next? We're concentrating on a seamless transition to the new organization. And future analysis of complicated issues of UAP issues will greatly benefit from the infrastructure, the process, and the procedures that we've developed to date. I'm confident that the task force under Navy leadership has forged a path forward that will allow us to anchor assessments in science and engineering by anecdotal evidence. We remain committed to that goal, as I know the USDI organization does as well. So thank you very much for your interest and continuing support for the UAP task force. The team's made a lot of progress, but we really are just establishing the foundation for the more detailed analysis that's yet to be done. And with your continued support, we can sustain that momentum necessary to produce data-centric analysis and understanding of the phenomena. Look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bray. This is the 3rd version of this task force, and to be frank, one of Congress's concerns is that the executive branch and administration on both parties has been sweeping concerns about UAPs under the rug by focusing on events that can be explained and avoiding events that cannot be explained. What can you what can you say to give the American people confidence that you aren't just focusing our attention on low-hanging fruit with easy explanations?
Congressman, I'll start, and then Mr. Bray, please feel free to weigh in. So the way that we're approaching this is with a more thorough, standardized methodology than what we have in the past. First and foremost, the Secretary of Defense is chartering this effort. This is not someone lower in the Department of Defense. And he has assigned that task to the Office of Secretary of Defense, the Undersecretary for Intelligence and Security. That's me, because I'm responsible for looking at intelligence matters. I'm responsible for security matters. This is potentially both. So when you start concerning ourselves with the safety of our personnel, the safety of our installations and bases, there's no other higher priority than what we have than actually getting after this. And as you have stated, we have been assigned that task to actually stand up an office, the AIM-SOG, which I believe the name, sir, will likely change. But we have moved forward in terms of moving to establish that office. We have, as of this week, picked a director for that effort, a very established and accomplished individual. We've identified spaces. We've worked with personnel across the Department of Defense, with the services, and we've worked with the IC, which is on board in helping us work through this standardized methodology for now, bringing in data, analyzing that data, and reporting that data in the appropriate method and appropriate means, so we can either get it to our service personnel to ensure their safety, or get it to you and the Congress and to the public to ensure that you have oversight to what we're doing. So chartered by the Secretary of Defense, standardized, and really a methodical approach. It's something that we're doing that has not been done before.
Can we get some kinds of assurances that your analysts will follow the facts where they lead and assess all hypotheses?
Absolutely. So we're open to all hypotheses. We're open to any conclusions that we may encounter.
Quickly, before I pass it to the ranking member and Chairman Schiff, I want to thank you both for taking the time, and I had a good time meeting with you last week, Director Moultrie, Undersecretary Moultrie. It's fair to say that you are a science fiction fan. Is that correct?
It is fair to say that I am an inquisitive mind who has spent 40 years in the intelligence field and has focused on both science and science fiction. That is fair.
Could you tell us about it?
Yeah, well, look, my generation grew up looking at space sagas and the Apollo program. So all of us who grew up in the 60s were just thrilled by watching our first astronaut land on the moon. That was a momentous occasion. To people who were of different generations, some of them didn't believe that it happened. I still have relatives and friends who don't believe it happened, right? Science fiction to them. But to us, it was, no, that's the progress that we've made. And so I was enthralled by that, and I've taken that to heart. I enjoy the challenge of what may be out there. I have mentioned to you that, yes, I have followed science fiction. I have gone to conventions, even. I'll say it on the record. Got to break the ice somehow. But, you know, I have done that, right? But there's nothing wrong with that. Don't necessarily dress up, but I do, you know, I do believe that it's important to show that the Department of Defense has, you know, we have character, and we're people just like you, just like the American people. We have our inquisitiveness. We have our questions. We want to know what's out there as much as you want to know what's out there. We get the questions not just from you, we get it from family members, and we get them night and day, not just in committee hearings. So finding what's out there is important. But first and foremost, it's important for us to do that so that we can ensure that our people, our personnel, our aviators, our bases and installations are safe. And then that curiosity factor is something else that we just want to know, because that's the human race. It's just, you know, that insatiable desire to know.
Thank you, sir. Ranking Member Crawford.
Mr. Moultrie, you said you don't necessarily dress up. That wasn't a real strong statement. Gentlemen, thank you for being here today. We appreciate it. And thank you, Mr. Moultrie, for breaking the ice the way you did. Appreciate that. The inability to understand objects in our sensitive operating areas is tantamount to an intelligence failure that we certainly want to avoid. This is not about finding alien spacecraft, but about delivering dominant intelligence across the tactical, operational, and strategic spectrum. So my question is, how can AIMSOG lead to prevention of intelligence surprises?
Sure, I'll start with that. So the goal of our effort is to integrate it into what we already do on a normal basis, which is look for the unknowns, Congressman, as you stated in your opening remarks, across all domains. So we've been doing this for decades. We've been looking at the space domain, looking at space objects, looking at space weather, looking at space phenomena. We've been looking at things in the air domain, and we, as you know, and I'll talk more about this in classified session, but we have a very concerted effort to understand adversarial platforms and adversarial developmental programs, and we do that also in the ground domain. And of course, we're very interested in what happens in the underwater or sea domain, if you will, subsurface domain. So if there are objects that are aviators or air crews are encountering in this air domain, and their sensors are discovering or detecting some of these objects, we want to just bring that in to the normal process that we have for identifying unknown unknowns. We want to make sure we have the intelligence requirements that allow us not only to look at that event from the time that it occurs forward, but maybe retrospectively, we want to go back and see if we can get to the left of that event to say, was there some developmental program that we, to get to your technical surprise issue, sir, that we should have known about? And if so, how do we put that intelligence requirement in place to ensure that we are following an adversarial development or any other development that may be out there? So that's what we want to do in terms of normalizing this and bringing it into the normal process of how we identify unknown unknowns.
So you mentioned fidelity, and I think it's important to talk about the relationship from the Navy as the lead agency on this. How do you interact with Space Force, Air Force to create that degree of fidelity? We're talking about sensors and so on. And I guess where I have some concerns that many of the images that we see commonly in this committee and even in open source, the resolution and the clarity that would allow a robust technical intelligence analysis is challenging. So is AIMSOG prepared to address the quality and quantity of data collected on UAP to advance intelligence collection? And do you have the adequate sensors you need to collect that high quality data?
One of the lines of effort that we have is looking at our sensor capabilities and to understand whether or not, as the video showed that Mr. Bray displayed, sometimes it's very fleeting data that we have on some of these objects. And we want to make sure that, one, our systems are calibrated to actually be able to collect on the objects. You know, our sensors today they're calibrated for specific things. We want to make sure they're calibrated for things of this nature, things of this size, things of this velocity, if I can use that term. We want to make sure that once we have that data is stored in some standardized method that we can then extract and that we can feed into our system real time. So we do not want this to take some prolonged period of time for us to get that data. But our goal is absolutely to have that high fidelity information that we get from all sensors. And we want to be able to integrate that with what we may have off of ground-based sensors. So whatever we may have on a platform, whatever we may have on the ground, whatever we may have from other sensors that we may have in different domains. We want to be able to integrate that all and get this integrated picture as we would, as I said, with any other unidentified objects or things that we are tracking as a part of our normal intelligence responsibilities.
Thank you. Last question, Mr. Bray, if you would. I'm a Navy pilot. I've encountered a UAP. Walk me through the reporting protocol once I see something that I think needs reported.
The first thing that aviator would do after landing as a part of their normal debriefing is they would contact their intelligence officer. Their intelligence officer would then walk them through first filing data preservation to ensure that that whatever sensor data may be on the aircraft, that we preserve that so that it's available for later analysis. Second, they would actually fill out a form that includes details like where they were operating, altitudes they were operating, speeds, what they observed, whatever sensor data they may have recorded from that. And then that report is filed. It goes two places. One, it goes through the operational chain of command, so that operational units are aware of what's being observed, and also to the UAP task force, so that they can take that data, database it, and quite often have individuals from the task force contact the aviator and ask them additional questions if there were things that weren't clear in the report. That then goes into a database where we begin to compare it with other observations that we have. Again, comparing for locations, comparing for altitudes, speeds, shapes, if any RF emissions were detected from the platform, all of that, so that we can try to reach some conclusions on that.
Thank you. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chairman Schiff.
Thanks, Chairman. Mr. Bray, can you rerun that first image? It looked like it was outside of a plane window. And if you wouldn't mind going up to the screen and tell us what we're seeing. Not that you can necessarily tell us what we're seeing, but
Right.
explain what we should be looking at in that first image.
Absolutely. And Alexi, what I'll ask is if you can stop it at a certain point.
That video is totally useless. I'm sorry. You're telling me they don't have anything better than
Are
that?
we looking outside of a civilian aircraft window? Is that what we're looking at? Okay.
I can safely say that is not a 23-minute video. Give me a break. It's like, did they choose the worst possible video from it's probably from a flip phone. Yeah, sorry, this pilot had a flip phone, so it was like 2 megapixels, and somebody needs to get the guy back on mic, because if somebody's talking, we can't hear them. I'm sorry, I can't find it now.
Is that it right there? Can you point to the screen again, what we're supposed to be looking at?
Mr. Chairman, we have identified it as the Robin balloon. Goes along with the Batman balloon. I'm joking. I don't think that was a Batman balloon. This video is a total waste of time. I mean, they can't even find it now. Oh, there it is. There it is. Do you see it? Like I said, my expectations were pretty low. This has met them. Oh, this is the flyby.
Okay, if you could stop that frame.
Not as good as the flyby
That's
we've
not
seen of the saucer, alleged saucer, outside the window of that commercial plane. Now, if you look closely enough, you can see the rivets. That's probably one of the worst. I would never show that video to anybody.
Just push play. Let's see if
Unless we had the pilot come out and say that, there was something that they saw later on that was closer.
coming up right here is there it went.
Oh,
Back up just
missed it again. 30
That's
minutes
wrong.
later, we'll
right
see
here.
it.
Zooms by the window, right in this area right there.
You would think they would have
There we go.
produced a slow motion
See that part right
version
there again?
before
I think we're having a
the
hard time
hearing, so we
stopping
wouldn't have to
it.
do this and waste time trying to find the 15 frames that the object appears. Ugh, jeez.
Okay.
So as you can see, it's difficult, and I think a part of the issue here is the laptop we're working with is not as easy for stopping that video in the right
We'll,
spot.
we'll describe what we have seen in that. What are we observing?
What you see here is aircraft that is operating in a U.S. Navy training range that has observed spherical object in that area. And as they fly by it, they take a video. You see it looks reflective in this video, somewhat reflective, and it quickly passes by the cockpit of the aircraft.
And is this one of the phenomena that we can't explain?
I do not have an explanation for what this specific object is.
And is this one of the situations where it is, that's the object that we're looking at right there? Thank you. And is this a situation where it was observed by the pilot and it was also recorded by the aircraft's instruments?
We'll talk about the multi-sensor part in a later session. But in this case, we have at least that.
In the Director of National Intelligence 2021 unclassified report, the ODNI reported 144 UAPs between 2004 and 2021, 80% of which were recorded on multiple instruments. And I take it with respect to some of those, you had a pilot seeing them if it was observed by a pilot,
right,
and you had multiple instruments recording it. So you really have three sensors, the human sensor and two technical sensors detecting the object. Is that?
For the majority of incidents that we had in the last year's report, the majority had multi-sensor data. When I talk about the 400 reports that we have now, that number will certainly go down because a lot of those new reports that we have are actually historic reports that are narrative based. So that percentage will go down just as a factor of the fact that the destigmatization has resulted in more narrative reports.
And that's the object we're looking at right there now, right?
That's it right there.
Okay. Last year's report also said that of those 144, 18 of them reportedly appear to exhibit unusual flight characteristics, appear to demonstrate advanced technology, and some of them appeared to remain stationary in winds aloft, move against the wind, maneuver abruptly, or move at considerable speed without discernible means of propulsion. That's pretty intriguing. And if you're able to answer this in this setting, are we aware of any foreign adversary capable of moving objects without any discernible means of propulsion?
I think I would, without discernible means of propulsion, I would say that we're not aware of any adversary that can move an object without discernible means of propulsion. The question then becomes, in many of these cases where we don't have a discernible mean of propulsion in the data that we have, in some cases, there is likely sensor artifacts that may be hiding some of that. There's certainly some degree of something that looks like signature management that we have seen from some of these UAP, but I would caution. I would simply say that there are a number of events in which we do not have an explanation. And there are a small handful in which there are flight characteristics or signature management that we can't explain with the data that we have. We'll continue. Those are obviously the ones that are of most interest to us. Earlier, when we asked about how you avoid technological surprise, the biggest way you avoid technological surprise is by collecting this type of data and by, importantly, calibrating the assumptions that you go into with how you do that analysis. I'll tell you, within the UAP task force, we have one basic assumption, and that is that generally speaking, our sensors operate as designed. And we make that assumption because many times these are multi-sensor collections. We make no assumptions about the origin of this or that there may or may not be some sort of technology that we don't understand. That's, I think, the key to avoiding technological surprises by calibrating those assumptions.
And finally, with respect to the second two videos showing the small triangles, the hypothesis is that those are commercial drones that, because of the use of night vision goggles, appear like triangles. Is that the operating assessment?
Some type of drone, some type of unmanned aerial system, and it is simply that light source resolves itself through the night vision goggles onto the SLR camera as a triangle.
And have we, in order to prove that hypothesis, flown a drone and observed it with that same technology to see whether we can reproduce the effect?
The UAP Task Force is aware of studies that have done that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Dr. Winstrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here. My first question is, through this process where there's been sightings, have the sightings been stationary or have they always been sighted from a moving object, from a plane or a ship that may be moving? Have these reports ever come from a stationary object being observed in the sky?
The UAP Task Force does have reports from reports from a stationary observer.
Because there's a difference observing something when you're moving as
Right.
well. It's physics, right? So that's
Right.
why I asked that question. Are we capable or have we made any breakthroughs or anyone made any breakthroughs to be able to cite something and make some determination at all of its composition, whether it's a solid or a gas? Is there any such capability?
From
Not asking what, I'm just
right from some of the returns. I mean, it's clear that that the majority, well, it's clear that many of the observations we have are physical objects from the sensor data that we have.
Well, gas is physical, is a physical object. It can be, and so, and you see where I'm going with this. I'm trying to determine what it is we're looking at. So if we can decide if something is a solid or a gas, and if there have been any conclusion on its capabilities, like its capabilities of movement, of turning, going, 180 degrees or 90-degree turn, anything along that line that we've been able to determine.
Within the, and again, I should point out that, that there is not a single explanation for UAP. There are a lot of different things that are unidentified aerial phenomena.
Basically, we really don't know much on that. That's all I'm trying to get at. I'm pleased that you have protocol right now for our military, but are there any non-military reports coming forward of similar events, or is it all coming from military?
The UAP Task Force has a very good working relationship with the FAA. They have very good working relationship with other parts of the U.S. government so that we can ingest reports from.
Do we have
from
any
those sources.
reports non-military?
Yes.
Thank you. That's my question. And do we need to put out protocol for civilians that may be in that arena, like through FAA? Do you think that would be appropriate and helpful?
I think standardized reporting, without a doubt, is key to helping us get to ascertain what some of these are.
I think it would be important as well. There are other people besides the U.S. that have had these experiences and reported them. Is that correct?
There are. That's correct.
Is it all of our allies, or is it allies and adversaries? What have we learned publicly?
So some of that, I think, sir, we'll save for closed session.
Well, that goes to my next question. Publicly, have others made anything which would not have to be considered closed?
So-
I don't want you to answer what they've said necessarily.
Allies
Close.
have seen these. China has established its own version of a UAP task force. So clearly, a number of countries have observations of things in the airspace that they can't identify.
And do we share data with some, with all? Are they sharing with us?
We share data with some, and some share data with us.
But not necessarily all that have publicly reported something?
That's correct.
Okay. And I think that's an important thing, and for the other session, actually, that we don't discuss that now. Because, obviously something like this can be a national security challenge for us, no doubt about it. If they're developed by an adversary through some breakthrough technology, they can be very disruptive to our military actions, or at least serve as a distraction. So my caution would be careful who we share our data with, and don't necessarily trust some of the data we may get from someone else. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. Himes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the objectives of this open hearing is to try to erode some of the stigma that attaches to, in particular, our military men and women reporting this. It's obviously really very serious because should one of our adversaries have developed a technology that we don't know about it, we need to know about it yesterday. And obviously, any sort of stigma that prevents our military from reporting this data as comprehensively as possible is a national security threat. So I really just have two questions in the service of that goal. The first is, the chairman asked that we run that video again. Most people, when they see a video, we're all used to seeing things from a car, seeing things from a sidewalk. Very few people have the experience of observing something through night vision goggles at Mach 1.5. So just talk for a minute about, if you would, whichever of you is most appropriate, how radically different observation is at high speed and 3 dimension than it is for most of us who walk around and drive cars.
So the first thing I think that's important to note about this is there are lots of things when you are moving very fast and an object is between you and a stationary reference point like the ground. It gives a lot of different impressions about how quickly something is or isn't moving. And it actually means that it is a challenge, especially with narrative-based data, to get a lot of information on that. That's why the sensor data is so important, because things do happen very quickly, as you see there. And sometimes things that happen very quickly, something may be moving very slow. That aircraft is moving quite fast. How fast that object is moving that goes by is probably very slow.
So I guess my point is that an observation, either a visual observation or a electronic observation, infrared or whatever, looks radically different than it does to most people. Even instruments are on gimbals and that sort of thing. So that creates a very unusual view to, again, those of us who are used to seeing things in 2 dimensions largely. And second question, I think, Mr. Bray, you said something that I want to unpack a little bit. A number of these UAPs, you said, we can't explain. Again, in the service of sort of reducing speculation and conspiracy theories, we can't explain can range from a visual observation that was distant on a foggy night, we don't know what it is, to we've found an organic material that we can't identify, right? Those are radically different worlds. So when you say we can't explain, give the public a little bit better sense of where on that spectrum of we can't explain we are. Are we holding materials, organic or inorganic, that we don't know about? Are we, picking up emanations that are something other than light or infrared that could be deemed to be communications? Give us a sense for what you mean when you say we can't explain.
Sure. When I say we can't explain, I mean exactly as you described there, that there is a lot of information, like the video that we showed, in which there's simply too little data to create a reasonable explanation. There are a small handful of cases in which we have more data that our analysis simply hasn't been able to fully pull together a picture of what happened. And those are the cases where we talk about where we see some indications of flight characteristics or signature management that are not what we had expected. When it comes to material that we have no material. We have detected no emanations within the UAP task force that would suggest it's anything non-terrestrial in origin. So there's when I say unexplained, I mean everything from too little data to the data that we have doesn't point us towards an explanation, but we'll go wherever the data takes us. Again, we've made no assumptions about what this is or isn't. We're committed to understanding these, and so we'll go wherever that data takes us.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And so I think it bears emphasis. When you say we can't explain, everything that you can't explain is in a bucket called data. Is that correct? And that would mean data collected by sensors, visual observations, everything that we can't explain, quote unquote, is in a bucket called data.
No, other.
A
not
narrative report
data.
from the early 2000s, if it just had a little bit of information on it, would be in our database and it would be unresolved.
I would add to that, it's insufficient data. I mean, that's one of the challenges we have. Insufficient data either on the event itself, the object itself, or insufficient data or plug-in with some other organization or agency that may have had something in that space at that time. So it's a data issue that we're facing in many of these instances, Congressman.
Understood. Thank you very much. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for allowing me to join this hearing. I really appreciate the witness's testimony. Mr. Moultrie, as the chairman mentioned, DoD had an initiative to study UFOs in the 1960s called Project Blue Book. It's also been well reported in our briefing and in other places that we have more recent projects, specifically ATIP. Could you describe any other initiatives that the DoD or DoD contractors have managed after Project Blue Book ended and prior to ATIP beginning? Did anything also predate Project Blue Book?
So I can't speak to what may have predated Project Blue Book. I mean, of course, there's Roswell and all these other things that people have talked about over the years. I'm familiar with Blue Book. I'm familiar with ATIP. I haven't seen other documented studies that have been done by DoD in that regard.
So you're not aware of anything in between Project Blue Book and ATIP?
I'm not aware of anything that's official that was done in between those two.
Okay.
Hasn't been brought to my attention.
Okay. Additionally, are you aware of any other DoD or DoD contract programs focused on UAPs from a technological engineering perspective? And by that, I mean, are you aware of any technology initiatives focused on this topic other than initiatives focused on the individual case investigations?
I am not aware of any contractual programs that are focused on anything related to this other than what we are doing in the Navy Task Force and what we are about to launch in terms of our effort.
Same question for you, Mr. Bray.
Same answer, not aware of anything outside what we are doing in the UAP task force.
So just to confirm, you're not aware of any technology or engineering resources that have been focused on these efforts besides what we've mentioned today?
Once again, I'll say no contractual or programmatic efforts that are involved. The reason why I qualify it that way, let me qualify it that way. I can't speak to what people may be looking at in the department. Somebody says, I'm looking at something that may be unidentified, and I can't speak to that. I speak to official programs that we have on the record.
It's also been reported that there have been UAP observed and interacting with and flying over sensitive military facilities, particularly, and not just ranges, but some facilities housing our strategic nuclear forces. One such incident allegedly occurred at Malmstrom Air Force Base, in which 10 of our nuclear ICBMs were rendered inoperable. At the same time, a glowing red orb was observed overhead. I'm not commenting on the accuracy of this. I'm simply asking you whether you're aware of it and whether you have any comment on the accuracy of that report.
Let me pass that to Mr. Bray. If you've been looking at UAPs over the last 3 years.
That data is not within the holdings of the UAP task force.
Okay, but are you aware of the report, or that the data exists somewhere?
I have heard stories. I have not seen the official data on that.
So you've just seen informal stories, no official assessment that you've done or exists within DoD that you're aware of regarding the Malmstrom incident?
All I can speak to is, what's within my cognizance of the UAP task force, and we have not looked at that incident.
Well, I would say, it's a pretty high-profile incident. I don't claim to be an expert on this, but that's out there in the ether. You're the guys investigating it. I mean, who else is doing it?
If something was officially brought to our attention, we would look at it. There are many things that are out there in the ether that aren't officially brought to our attention.
So how would it have to be officially brought to your attention? I'm bringing it to your attention.
Sure, so,
this is pretty official.
Sure. So we'll go back and take a look at it, but generally there is some authoritative figure that says there is an incident that occurred. We'd like you to look at this. But in terms of just tracking what may be in the media that says that something occurred at this time, at this place, there are probably a lot of leads that we would have to follow up on. I don't think we have resources to do that right now.
Well, I don't claim to be an authoritative figure, but for what it's worth, I would like you to look into it. And
Sure.
if for no other reason, you could dismiss it and say this is not worth wasting resources on.
Will do.
And then finally, are you aware of a document that appeared around 2019, sometimes called the Admiral Wilson Memo or EW Notes Memo?
I am not.
You're not.
I'm not personally aware of that.
Okay. This is a document in which, again, I'm not commenting on the veracity. I was hoping you would help me with that, in which a former head of DIA claims to have had a conversation with the Dr. Eric Wilson and claims to have sort of been made aware of certain contractors or DoD programs that he tried to get fuller access to and was denied access to. So you're not aware of that?
I'm not aware, Congressman.
In my 10 seconds remaining, then I guess I just would ask, Mr. Chairman, unanimous consent to enter that memo into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.
Mr. Christian Moultrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to both of you for appearing today and for your public service. First question is, there have been no collisions between any U.S. assets and one of these UAPs, correct?
We have not had a collision. We've had at least 11 near misses, though.
And maybe we'll talk about those 11 near misses or any place where there's close proximity. I assume, or tell me if I'm wrong, there's been no attempt, there's no communications or any kind of communication signals that emanate from those objects that we've detected, correct?
That's correct.
And have we attempted to communicate with those objects?
No.
So we don't even put out a alert saying, U.S. Identify yourself. You are, within our flight path or something like that. We haven't said anything like that.
We've not put anything out like that. Generally speaking, for example, in the video that we showed earlier, it appears to be something that is, unmanned, appears to be something that may or may not be in controlled flight. And so we've not attempted any communication with that.
Okay, so, and I assume we've never discharged any armaments against a UAP, correct?
That's correct.
How about wreckage? Have we come across any wreckage of any kind of object that has now been examined by you?
The UAP task force doesn't have any wreckage that isn't explainable, that isn't consistent with being of terrestrial origin.
Do we have any sensors underwater to detect on submerged UAPs? Anything that is in the ocean or in the seas?
So I think that would be more appropriately addressed in closed session, sir.
Okay. I think one of the biggest questions that I have is, we say with a lot of probability, we say they, quote unquote, probably do represent physical objects, close quote. When we say probably, is that because we cannot conclusively say that they are physical objects?
In the task force report, when I say probably represent physical objects, most of them represent physical objects. There could be some that are more of a meteorological phenomena, something like that, that may not be a physical object in the sense that most people think of something you could go up and touch.
But the ones where you say most of them represent physical objects, can you say that they are definitely, like with 100% certainty, that they are physical objects?
I can say with certainty that a number of these are physical objects.
Okay, so we can't rule out that some of them may not be physical objects.
So some certainly could be a sensor anomaly or something like that. Some could be.
Now, how about with regard to UAPs? We've talked about UAPs on training areas, but obviously there's some sensor bias. I would think we put sensors in training areas. How about with regard to non-training areas? Do we track what's in open source and what civilians and others have tracked? And have we found similarities to what they've observed in terms of UAPs in non-training areas to the ones that are in training areas?
The UAP task force is worked very hard to make sure the data set that we're working with is a data set that we have very good control over that data. So we have some partnerships with FAA so that we get some of that, so we get that reporting in. But if it comes to just, open source reports or someone says that they saw something, that generally does not make it into our database.
So basically, it sounds like we have a good partnership with FAA. But apart from FAA, we don't have partnerships with other agencies or other entities that might be tracking so that we could enlarge our data set to make comparisons.
So we will. So that's the goal of this next effort will be to expand that relationship with the rest of government and the interagency. So we can understand what they're seeing, what we're seeing. We can correlate on each other's holdings. and
Because I
hopefully
think,
resolve this.
sorry to interrupt, but I think that we might have a bias right now going on with regard to just reporting on UAPs being in training areas when we don't really track what's happening elsewhere. Last question, have our encounters with UAPs altered the development of either our offensive or defensive capabilities or even our sensor capabilities?
We'd save that for the closed session.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. LaHood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and want to thank the witnesses for being here today. Obviously, this topic of UAPs has attracted a lot of interest in people that are curious about this hearing today. As we talk about, and I would say there's a lot of what I would call amateur interest groups that are involved in the UAP field. My question is, when there are unsubstantiated claims or manufactured claims of UAPs or kind of false information that's put out there, what are the consequences for people that are involved with that or groups that are involved with that?
So one of the concerns that we have is that there are a lot of individuals and groups that are putting information out there that that could be considered to be somewhat self-serving. We're trying to do what's in the best interest of, one, the Department of Defense, and then two, what's in the best interest of the public, to ensure that we can put factual-based information back into the mainstream and back into the bloodstream of the reporting media that we have, so people understand what's there. It's important because we are attempting, as this hearing has drawn out, to understand, one, what may just be natural phenomenon, two, what may be sensor phenomenology or things that were happening with sensors, three, what may be legitimate counterintelligence threats to places that we have or bases or installations, or security threats to our platforms. And anything that diverts us off of what we have with the resources that have been allocated to us, send us off in these spurious chases and hunts that are just not helpful. And they also they also contribute to the undermining of the confidence that the Congress and the American people have that we are trying to get to the root cause of what's happening here, report on that, and then feed that back into our national security apparatus so we are able to protect the American people and our allies. So it is harmful, it is hurtful, but hopefully if we get more information out there, we'll start to lessen the impact of some of those spurious reports.
So just taking that a step further, so that misinformation, false narratives, manufactured, so what are the consequences? Are there legal consequences? Are there examples that you can give us where people have been held accountable by this misinformation or disinformation?
I can't give you, any examples where somebody's been legally held liable for putting something out there, but
well, I guess what's the deterrent from people engaging in this activity?
I don't know. I don't have that answer. That's something that welcome the dialogue with Congress to talk about that with the members who help legislate those laws to say what should be the legal ramifications that we could use to potentially hold individuals accountable, whether it be citizens or information that might be injected into our media by other forces or other countries, if you will.
And in terms of DOD's and review and analysis in this field, I mean, is there a standard in place when it comes to UAPs? I mean, is there any guidance you look to that's codified in law or otherwise within DOD that kind of sets out the standards for UAPs and what to look for?
I think that's part of what the group that we're standing up now will be chartered to do. We're actually, from my organization, we'll be looking at policy and standards that we have to come to you and work with you to actually put in place and promulgate across our government.
Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. Welch.
Thank you. I'm going to follow on the line of questions from Mr. LaHood. Gentlemen, what seems incredibly difficult for you is that there's two almost competing but different narratives. One is no one knows whether there's extraterrestrial life. It's a big universe, and it would be pretty presumptuous to have a hard and fast conclusion. And then if there is, it's not beyond the realm of possibility that there is some exploration coming here. And that underlies a lot of the reports you get. I think Mr. LaHood was asking about that. People think there must be extraterrestrial life, and it's not at all beyond the pale that there would be a visit here. On the other hand, as the DOD, you have the responsibility to make sure that our national security is protected, and that if there are surveillance drones or active drones that can disable our systems, that has to be analyzed, has to be stopped. So how do you divide how do you separate your responsibilities where you get all these reports from folks who maybe in good faith, maybe not, believe that you should be investigating every possible report of a extraterrestrial incident? I'll start with you, Mr. Moultrie.
Sure, indeed, Congressman, and thank you for the question. It's important that we, as a part of this effort, really build out the relationship that we have with others, including NASA, and for the reasons that you just pointed out. So there are elements in our government that are engaged in looking for life in other places, and they have been doing that for decades. Right? They've been searching for extraterrestrial life. There are astrobiologists who have been doing this too. We're a part of that same government. And so our goal is not to potentially cover up something if we were to find something. It's to understand what may be out there, examine what it may mean for us, if there are any, from a defense perspective, any national security implications or ramifications. But then to work with organizations as appropriate, if it's a weather phenomenology with NOAA, if it's a potential for extraterrestrial life or an indication of extraterrestrial life with someone like NASA.
So the transparency actually is very important
Completely.
for public consumption.
Completely.
But we're going to have a classified briefing, and without going into the details of what kinds of secrets that we can't share here, what is it? What are we protecting? I don't know if you can answer this question in this open forum, but in fact, your perception of what it is we have to quote protect.
So I think right now what's really important for us to protect is how we know certain things. So there are a lot of things that we know, whether it be about the thinking of other leaders around the world, the weapon systems that are being developed, or how we detect things that may be threats to us. Many of those things are the result of some of our most sensitive sources and methods. And we'll use those things, not just for this effort, but those same sources and methods are used to help protect us from adversaries and from others who might mean to do us harm. There aren't separate UAP sensors. There's not a separate UAP processing computer. There's not a separate UAP dissemination chain or whatever. So it's the same processes. It's the same system that we have that helps us do all that. We need to protect that because this is something that we're looking at, but we're sure there are going to be other things that we'll look at in the future that we'll need those same sensors, we'll need those same sources and methods to help us do. So we're protecting the fact of that this nation has developed capabilities that enable us to know what may be threats to us and to counter those threats before they become something of a national issue.
Thank you very much. I want to thank both you, Mr. Bray, and you, Mr. Moultrie, for your appearance today. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlemen, beyond videos, is there a range of other information that the executive branch has that would be valuable to the American people while protecting sources and methods, obviously? the details of individual encounters, including the time, place, and details of an encounter? And does the AIMSOG have a clear and repeatable process for considering public release as part of the process?
Chairman Carson,
And do you commit to building that process if it's not in place?
the UAP task force, the security classification guide that the UAP task force has been operating under that I approved really was meant to protect those sources and methods and meant to protect any knowledge that an adversary intelligence entity may gain from understanding what we're when we're tracking it or if we're not. And so that has been an important piece in the balance between transparency and preserving our warfighting advantage, because the U.S. military does train as it would fight. What I will commit to is, at least for that material that's under my authority as the Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence, for information that we have when it does not involve sources and methods, and when we can, with a reasonable degree of confidence, determine that it does not pose a foreign intelligence or national security threat, and it's within my authority to do so, I commit to declassifying that. So I believe very much in the transparency of this, and we work very hard to balance that with our national security needs.
And I'll just add, Congressman, just over the last 3-4 months, I think that the intelligence community and the national defense apparatus have disclosed more information on various events than it has in probably the previous 10 years. You have our commitment to work closely with the Director of National Intelligence and others in the declassification and downgrading of intel apparatus to ensure that we can get whatever information that we can out to the American people and to the public writ large.
Greatly appreciated, sir. Ranking Member Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Stefanik is en route, I believe, just real quickly, but in the interim, if you'll indulge me, I just have a couple of real small questions. One is, do we have an example? Can you cite a specific example of an object that can't be explained as having been human-made or natural?
I mean, the example that I would say that is still unresolved, that I think everyone understands quite well, is the 2004 incident from Nimitz. We have data on that, and it simply remains unresolved. Does not mean it resolves to being something, right, that is easily explainable or obviously it resolves to being something that is difficult to explain.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't point to something that definitively was not man-made, but I can point to a number of examples in which remain unresolved.
Gotcha. With regard to videos that have appeared in open source channels, for example, the Tic Tac video, does AIMSOG maintain control of videos, and how do you prevent leaks of potentially classified videos or other material?
So the AIMSOG, as we establish that organization, we will have a process for classified and compartmented holdings, and we will find a way of getting positive control over those. We have our sensitive access programs and special access programs that allow us to put what we call SAPs around things, and then there's controlled access programs that allow us to put caps around things. So we'll have that in place. Our goal will be ensuring that we're sharing that with the appropriate analysts and the appropriate exploiters, if you will, who can look at that data too. What we don't want to do is bring something into a DoD database or a DoD holding and then have so many wrappers around it, it's not available to those who really need to look at it and to exploit it. And that's one of the reasons we're establishing relationships with the interagency, with the IC and others to be able to do that, sir. But we will do our best to maintain positive control over the materials that we have within our holdings.
Thank you.
Chairman Schiff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just going back to the 2021 report, under the category of UAP appear to demonstrate advanced technology, those 18 incidents in which some of the UAP appear to remain stationary, winds aloft, move against the wind, maneuver abruptly, or move at considerable speed without discernible means of propulsion. It goes on to say, in a small number of cases, military aircraft systems processed radio frequency energy associated with UAP sightings. I couldn't tell from that whether that small number of cases was a part of the subset of 18. That is, among the 18 which appeared to move with unusual pattern or flight characteristics, did some of those also emit radio frequency energy?
I would have to check with our UAP task force on that. I believe, without getting into specifics that we can do in the closed session, at least some that we have detected RF emissions from were not behaving oddly otherwise.
And the significance of measuring that radio frequency energy is what? That we suspect that this was some form of aircraft in which there were radio transmissions.
The biggest thing that you're looking for there is any indication of an effort to jam whatever sensors that we may have looking at it.
But I would also add to that radio frequency, as you know, Congressman, is used to control various platforms too. So the fact of emanations coming off of any platform, whether it be a UAV or another platform, could be radio frequency activity related to that entity transmitting out or something transmitting to that platform. And of course, we have a sensitivity with our airborne platforms of picking it up, which is one of the reasons that we try to prevent people from using their cell phones on airplanes and things like that. It's very sensitive to RF emanations. So that's a part of what we'll be looking at in the AIMSOG. What is this? Is this something that we can collect on, and can we start to characterize the signaling environment around the emanations that may be coming off of some of these UAPs?
So that energy then that was recorded could be either an effort to jam, or it could be an effort to control a UAV, or any other communication with that craft.
I would say that's accurate.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. As the ODNI report makes clear, one possible explanation for UAPs is that we are detecting U.S. aircraft, either secret air programs or even test prototypes. I won't ask you in this setting, obviously, to describe any secret DoD programs. That said, I do want to make sure the U.S. government isn't chasing its own tail. Firstly, do you have a clear and repeatable process to check with compartmented programs about whether a UAP sighting is attributable to a U.S. aircraft? Secondly, does the AIMSOG staff have the clearances and read-ons that they need to investigate all of these incidents? And thirdly, when your staff cannot be read on, are your questions to those who are read on even being answered?
So I'll start, and then I'll pass that to Mr. Bray. So we're very conscious of the potential blue on blue issue or U.S. on U.S. And so we've established relationships with organizations and entities that are potentially flying or developing platforms for their own interests, if you will. And our goal is to continue, and we have a repeatable process. I think we've had that process for some time, to deconflict activities that we may have, to ensure that we are not potentially reporting on something that may be a developmental platform or a U.S. operational platform that is performing either testing or performing a mission. So we will have that in place. We've already had those discussions with organizations and entities. We want to ensure that we're protecting their equities. We want to ensure that we're protecting their sources and methods while also getting at what we have here. We want to be able to deconflict those.
Absolutely. The UAP task force has had a process in place to work with other elements of the Department of Defense and other elements of the government to ensure that that there's an as simple a way as possible to deconflict those. And when we reference that in the report, I should say that we were simply accounting for the fact that there could possibly be one or two data points that had leaked through, but we were quite confident that was not the explanation.
How are you all liaisoning with Space Command? Specifically, how are you partnering with the parts of the U.S. Space Command responsible for space domain awareness? And how, if at all, are you partnering with the Space Force to analyze UAPs?
The UAP task force has a very good relationship with Space Force, as it does with the rest of the Department of Defense. We have pulled analysts in from Space Force to ensure that that we're availing ourselves of that expertise, as well as any other material they may have that would be helpful.
And Congressman, as you know, Space Force and Space Command, they have responsibility for space domain awareness. So what we've done, we coordinated with Space Force, we coordinated with their J2, and she is on board in terms of helping us plug into what they have and for us to have this interactive exchange of information and data. And we're doing that with all the services, not just with Space Force or Space Command.
Thank you, sir. Ranking member, any additional questions? All right, Chairman Schiff. All right, with that, I want to thank you all for taking the time out. I also want to thank my colleagues on both sides of the aisle for participating in this very historical and important hearing. I think it's one of the few times we can demonstrate some degree of bipartisanship around UAPs and UFOs. So I love it. Appreciate it. Thank you. And we will see you all. We will recess this hearing for the moment and return in a closed session at noon.
I think that's it, right? Let's see. What did he say at the end there? That is it.
It's one of the few times we can demonstrate some degree of bipartisanship around UAPs and UFOs. So I love it. Appreciate it. Thank you. And we will see you all. We will recess this hearing for the moment and return in a closed session at noon.
Yeah, that's it. Like I said, my expectations were 0. So, and my expectations were very low. And this actually, I don't think it even reached my expectations. It was pretty much, I mean, there's some things interesting in there, but nothing major. If you guys have any questions, any comments, use that link I just put in there, which I'll put again. And I can go through the whole hearing. My notes are not perfect, but you could use that link. And, I was not expecting the Admiral Wilson documents to come up. So either that gentleman had an interest or somebody passed them on to him. He got them in the public record. So that's good. You just put in this link. And Moultrie mentioned Roswell, and just as in passing. Let's see. Let me just make sure. All right. If you guys, I don't know how much there really is to say about this, except it's less than what and my expectations were low. So, I'm not that disappointed, but I expected a little more than that. What about you guys? I will add in BT. Hey, BT, are you there? If you are, you're muted. Yeah, Wilson documents are in the official record. More people will see them, but, that's not that big of a deal. One person had an interest in it. Hopefully, Gillibrand and Rubio will call Lou and Admiral Wilson in an open hearing in the Senate now. Yeah, well, it's really not Admiral Wilson you want to hear from. He could be part of it, but you want to hear from the people who were actually in the program that he was allegedly shut out of. You want to hear from the people in the program, and they need amnesty. And people were throwing around, in Bender's article, he suggested amnesty, and people were hoping it would be brought up, but it wasn't. So really, I thought, that's interesting. You thought it exceeded my expectations. There were some good questions, definitely some good questions. Earlier, I can't find all of the comments from earlier, damn it. Who was it? You guys, you can do just audio if you want. Yeah, there were Blue Book questions, nothing about OSAP. ATIP was mentioned, but nothing. 2004, you could say, well, that was OSAP and ATIP also investigated. But yeah, OSAP, they weren't going to go near OSAP. They maybe, I don't know, remember if somebody mentioned health-related effects. But other than that, the Wilson documents are worthless to anyone who has not spent a few hours learning context and stuff. You can see the docs without knowing anything about it. It's not going to make a difference. Doesn't matter. It's in the public record, so somebody could look at it. Yeah, I agree that people will look at that and say, "What is this?" But it's nice to have that in the public record. So, yeah, Chris, definitely use that link. They are not inclusive and don't have formidable follow-up questions. They take their responses at face value. Yeah, they didn't press them enough. I'm not sure what pressing would have done, but we all know Lou needs to be up there because Lou will speak to what he experienced in ATIP, and he can go as far as he possibly can. And those folks know I'm sure they know who Lou is. So, yeah, this is a first step. But yeah, they did. That was one good thing that they brought up the Tic Tac and said it was unknown. And also when they started going into the, it's possibly our technology.
I think
All right, I'm just trying to get to the
These and UFOs, so I love it. Appreciate it. Thank you. And we will see you all. We will recess this hearing
Sorry,
for
I'm
the
just
moment and
trying
return
to
in
get
a
to the
closed
graphic
session
again.
at noon.
So, they brought up the possibility that it was our technology. And then Bray said, well, yeah, in that report, because he referenced the report, I think that was Schiff. It was Bray who said, but that was only a couple of incidences. A couple of incidents we thought might be possibly our technology, but we're pretty sure it's not. So that's them saying that. Of course, you can make the argument that if it is our technology, there's no way in hell they're going to admit it. Although, some of the incidences when these guys do come across black technology, they're taken in, they signed an NDA, and they're briefed on it. But of course, you may never ever hear about that. A lot of what was said is in direct contradiction to what Lou had said. I wonder how he feels about this. He's probably not surprised. He warned people to lower your expectations. And yeah, they tried to really hammer home air clutter and, things like that, drones. But, it's a first step. So I wouldn't get too disappointed. Hopefully it's not too long before we get the Senate, and hopefully we get some other information. For me, I'm just looking forward to reading Lou's book. First of all, I love reading, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon was great for me. And I just want to see what Lou has to say, see what other surprises he has in there. Bray looked a bit uncomfortable at times. Got them on the record saying they're not aware of any program between Blue Book and ATIP. Yes, that was important. Thank you for bringing that up. We're not aware of any official program. Oh, I forget the exact word. If he said documented, or I know he said he's talking about programmatic, but he used another word. Here we go. Moultrie's like, yeah, I heard of Roswell. He just mentioned it in passing. He goes, but I haven't seen any other documented studies. Not aware of anything, any office hasn't been brought to my attention. In other words, it could be there. I just hasn't been brought to my attention. I'm not aware of any contractual program focused on this, which if it's a buried special access program, yeah, he can get away with saying that. Or programmatic. I can't speak to what people may be looking at because he's talking about individuals who might be looking at UFOs, but nothing official, no official programs on the record. So if it's a waived, unacknowledged special access program, he could always say, I didn't really know about that. I was being truthful. But they've heard about that stuff. They have to have heard about it. Oh, there are people looking to call in. All right, give me a second. The questions they wouldn't answer publicly, but would in closed sessions were very interesting and revealing. I need to transcribe all of this. So, a lot of it is boring, but I still have to do it. There may be a transcript later on. They usually, I would think they have a stenographer there. What they say in private sessions that will matter to the greater public, hence why I'm positive as far as what they said they're going to talk about in the private sessions. Yeah, I need to go over all of that again, but I will try to bring in some folks here Let's see. We got Chris. Other folks, I don't. It says your device not connected. What's up, Chris? What do you think?
Did they mention the Wilson documents? Did I hear
They
that
did.
right?
They did. They did mention the Wilson documents, and it's like I was surprised at that. Let me get rid of the screen. I was surprised at that, and but it's like I'm not gonna gloat too much over that because it's one person who brought him up, and they said, we're not aware of that. But it's nice to have in the public record, and I was hoping, well, ladies and gentlemen, actually, we have Eric Davis in the crowd right now. If you'd like to hear,
That would be savage as hell. That would
we
have
got
been
that. We got
great.
the Tic Tac. We got.
I'm,
And then we have the Tic Tac, them saying it's unexplained,
yeah,
which they
It,
waited till the end.
I lost my internet most of the way through, and my son's trying to climb on the chair right now. But I did catch it, and I'm amazed. Giuliano, hey, this is my son, and he was all excited too. Yeah, I was great. I can't believe that this even happened. Not my wildest dreams that I would have thought a congressperson would have brought that up. Now, my question is how do they investigate that? I don't know how they get into that. I know that right now I'm going to bring it up to some journalists. Hello?
Yeah, I mean it's a hard one to investigate since Admiral Wilson has denied it all. So I mean I'm not holding out hope we're going to hear any breakthroughs on that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. It's just your
You there?
video was kind of closed. I feel like the
And he
scene
froze
for
up.
Saturday Night Live where Rudy Giuliani's son is like attacking him and like hanging on him from Saturday Night Live. But I'll try to get my son.
It's Andrew. But yeah, I mean, I don't expect any deep. I don't expect any deep governmental dive into the Wilson documents anytime. So, but
we'll see.
it was brought up, and we had a hearing, and you never know. And and of course, I am spoiled from the last 4.5 years. It's amazing that we had hearings. I want to see the Senate hearings. No mention of OSAP, which was the program, and they only mentioned ATIP in passing. But it was interesting them trying to get them on the record saying if you knew of any other programs before Blue Book or after Blue Book, which
and they said they weren't
we're
aware.
pretty confident there were and there are programs.
Yeah,
Weren't aware.
that
They
was,
gave themselves outs, the way they described it. I'm not aware of no contractual program. Of course,
I'm just
if
elated.
there is a special
I'm
access
happy.
program.
I'm happy. It's a good win. I don't know about you, but I'm happy. I don't know about you, but mission accomplished for right now. Hopefully these questions will lead to more hearings.
We need more hearings. We need Lou. We need Lou to testify at the very minimum. I mean, if he was up there, it would be such a totally different result. Not that this is horrible, but I mean, most people are going to be disappointed. I could see it in the chat, and I understand that. But I'm a little disappointed, but my expectations were low, so it's not going to ruin my day. It's the first hearing. I need to transcribe it. If it's probably transcribed anyway, that's how they work. I thought he said hi, Uncle Joe. I'm Uncle Joe. I'm Uncle UFO Joe.
He's everywhere, man. He's hanging on me.
Yeah, I don't gotta apologize.
Well, some people be like, "That's not professional." No, I'm not a professional.
No, it's great when the guys go on live and then they have their kid walk in the background and they freak out. It's like, you're a kid. Who cares? You're a parent. So yeah, first step, and but go ahead. You're breaking up really bad.
Yeah, well, this one who's texting me who is tangentially, I'm breaking up. I said everybody who is texting me is very excited for what they saw.
And we got a Jeremy Corbell shout out, which was nice, Mr. Corbell. All right, Chris, I'm gonna have to let you go because I cannot hear you. You're breaking up so bad. I'm gonna have to cut you off because I can't hear you. All right, Chris. It's really bad. I'm sorry, Chris. He had a bad connection. I'm pretty sure it's not my connection. Mellon just tweeted. Let me see. Let me go to Twitter. I apologize, Chris. It was really bad. Let's see what Mellon had to say. I think Mellon would be disappointed, but let me see. Here we go. See? I can read Christopher Mellon pretty good. Share screen. Chrome. There. So Mellon said, it's the see and say Mellon. Mellon said that was a frustrating hearing, as well as a reminder both of how far we've come and how far we still have to go. Agreed. Great first step. Frustrating because it seems like we're in kindergarten on UFOs, and I realize the general public is, but that does not excuse, some of the answers that were given that we know there's more. And the excuse of doing it in a classified setting, it's the same old stuff. Source. I talked to somebody last night. I'm like, expect them to reference sources and methods a lot, and they did. But there are ways. We promise, though, if we can release information without giving any valuable data to our adversaries, we will. So, yeah. So that's Mellon. The pro and con of today's hearing. I doubt Lou, of course, you hoped Lou would be there, but that wasn't going to happen. Let me see. We can just check out Twitter too. If you guys don't want to call in, I don't think Lou, and his name is not coming up. There it is. Let's see if Lou said anything. No, not yet. So just real quick let's see what Twitter looks like. For anybody who missed the hearing and doesn't have a web link, it'll be on C-SPAN 2 tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. I'll just go over this quick, and you guys can, like I said, call in. Linda Thompson, the hearings were worse than my low expectations. Where was the truth in testimony? Adrian, nothing but deliberate obfuscation. It's unfortunate. No, this is what I expect from most people. That's why it's good to have low expectations. My whole life with my sports teams, I've had low expectations. So I'm used to losing. Not that today was a loss, but, somebody was hoping for transparency. And I heard people talking about behind the scenes what they expected. Oh, I do want to say something about the Boca response. People are like, oh, that's it. It's a triangle. You need to listen to Jeremy Corbell. Jeremy Corbell has spoken to those folks, and I think we need to wait to hear from those folks. If you have somebody saying, oh yeah, I saw the object and it wasn't through the night vision and it was a pyramid and a triangle, because that's what angle of observations, it suggests that they saw it with their eyes. But I want to hear from those folks. So I'm not ready just to pass that off as Boca and a drone. Everything is, as Jeremy said, the people he spoke to said everything they encounter, they write down as drones. It's just what they're supposed to write down. It's the standard. We don't know what it is. Write drones, because they know it's going to be, FOIA'd, where people will be able to look at the deck logs. Science Bob McGuire. If you want to watch a complete nothing burger foisted on the world, this is it. Mellon and Elizondo failed. Yeah, okay. Mellon and Elizondo failed. It's their fault, Bob. Give me a break. You can't force people to give up information. They've always said it's going to take time. That's just a horrible take. Did the Admiral Wilson Davis memo get into the record during the hearing? Did I hear it correctly? Yes. And there's Mike promoting me. Thank you, Mike. You guys, tell me what you have to say more. Don't bring up the Mets. That's my team. Trust me, Mets, Rangers, Knicks. Total. Let me see if I can get people in. Let me try Greg. Are you there, Greg? If you are, you're muted. And folks, it would be nice if anybody wants to call in. You could keep your camera off or put tape over it. I don't care. There you are. Greg?
Yeah.
So what do you think? What do you think, Greg?
To me, it was a a big disappointment. I just think this is the same thing that the government does. They're always restarting, right? They're still talking about calibrating data, and just the fact that there wasn't even any reference to a lot of these other incidents where we know there's real data, whether it's the Omaha or the gimbal. Just this idea we've got to coordinate. It's just, to me, it's just another way of how they can just drag the ball, how they can drag this game out as long as humanly possible. And so I always feel like it's got to come from, I have this belief that we've got to get some sort of high definition image from like the Galileo project that is just, pristine. And there's no question that it's a UFO. And then that would force this type of hearing to have a different tone until there's really something, I think, in the open source or that's just out there that's just unequivocal. And it's not, I don't think it's going to be data. It's going to be an image that really captures the public mind, because that's the only thing that's going to move this, is that it's the public really gets on board and really pushes. And it's stuff like this. Anyone who listened to this, I don't think you learned anything if you were a newbie. You're like, I don't even know what's going on. So to me, it just, and I get it could, I hope it's a first step to something better, but I just have such a view of how, of that their long-term goal is not to disclose this in any way or the least amount possible.
No, I agree. And I agree about what it's going to take to get the masses interested. It's going to take an amazing video that we assume exists. We have people who don't think that exists, and this has all been a fraud for 70 years. I do not think that's the case, but we still need to see the video. It's like, it's frustrating. It definitely gets frustrating. All these years, you never get to see anything. Or it's, so I agree, either some really incredible sighting on video, multiple sensors with the witnesses speaking up, or, an event that is a daytime event that is clear as day, but of course people will say that is well, it depends on what the sighting is. If it's a massive football field sized object that's just hovering and takes off in a blink of an eye, that could do it. I don't think most people would say, well, that was our black technology. But even if that was the case, even if people think we have that tech, that story alone is a big story, which I don't think we have that. We may have some technology, but it's still, it might be a bigger story if we do have that technology, because we could change the world. Where are you? Which part of the country are you?
I live in Telluride, Colorado. So I go to the desert a lot, and we're always looking for UFOs. I would say, I don't know if what you guys thought. It looked like Schiff was somewhat annoyed in his facial expressions when he was getting some of his questions answered. That last time he was speaking, I felt like he was getting frustrated that there really wasn't going to be any answers to the public that were helpful. I don't know what you guys thought when Schiff was speaking.
It was hard for me to watch because I took notes during the entire time, so I could refer back on what they were saying, and my notes aren't even that great. So I need to watch it again, although some of it's going to be painful because it was very slow, and it was definitely dry for folks like us. I need to watch that, but yeah, he's a.
I mean, no one brought up the Air Force and the lack of coordination. I had to take my kids to school for a little bit. I don't know did they talk about the Air Force and the lack of their participation in the original report, anything like that. To me, I mean, it's a huge, they just ignore it.
All they said was the Air Force has their reporting, just like the Navy, they have a knee board inside the plane where if they have a sighting, it tells them what to do. And they talked about what happens when they have a sighting, but nothing about obfuscation on the Air Force. Nobody asked about it. I mean, for me, I even want to go further. You hear people talk about the Air Force and they say, well, they don't want to release the information related to the nuclear bases that they protect or nuclear missile sites. For me, though, the next level is, when people tell me privately that look at the Christian angle, the evangelical angle, that's a big part of why the Air Force folks, some of the higher ups are very hardcore about this not being studied because they think it's demonic. That is a big problem, but it's not going to be brought up. They don't want to offend, obviously, people who are religious, number one. And number two, it's just, that's not going to be brought up for a very long time, in my opinion. I mean, we're just, like I said, we're in kindergarten right now with what we just saw.
Yeah, I think that statement you just made about how, there's this large or there's a group of powerful people in the way, whether it's the Collins elite or wherever we want to refer to them as. And the fact that, in any sort of setting, we can't call those people out. I mean, to me, that just illustrates the, this like permanent obfuscation that's going to occur. Like, we can't even address in any way the parts of the government that are truly standing in the way of it. They won't even, it's an untalkable situation. And I just sit here and say, it's, they're still not ready to have any sort of honest conversation. It feels like in any way until we really push the needle. I think the public has to somehow, and it's really got to come from, we got to get organized and get some funding, which Galileo is starting to do, things like that. But it's never going to come. Like, listen, it's not going to come from Bigelow, right? He probably knows stuff, and they're not going to be able to say it, whether they have NDAs or they're stuck with, unable to disclose stuff from the government. So it's literally going to have to be some sort of open source type of progress or entity or organization that's going to push this. And that's just how I think about it. I mean, there's no way the government's going to come kicking and screaming, right? We're going to have to force that disclosure. And I think that until there's some sort of thing that causes it, these hearings are going to be just like this. I mean, honestly, for anyone who's studied the subject for any sort of period of time, like the two videos they show, one you couldn't even see anything, and they can't even, right? They don't even know how to, like, they're going to go we're going to have a hearing, and we're going to have a video. We're not even going to really be able to stop it so you could see what we're showing you. And then the other one is one they're going to disprove, right? They're going to say, oh, that one wasn't what we thought it was. And it's like, wow, the two things that they showed are, one, we can't even see it, and two is that one we figured out what it was. And then so it's just like the tone they present is just so incredibly frustrating.
I agree, and the video display was the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen. You don't make another version that's slow motion that shows the object. Really, we have to try to. I mean, they spent 5 minutes trying to show us what object they were talking about, and then I think here on my screen you see Chrissy Newton, who has done work with the debrief, said, "Will George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell release a statement?" Knapp is attached to this as well. I think she's talking about them saying it was Boca. It sounds like Mick West may have advised some of these folks. In my opinion, it's too early to say that, because Jeremy Corbell has said he has interviewed folks on those boats. So I want to hear from those folks directly. And if they say visually with their own eyes they saw a triangle or pyramid shaped, the Boca argument goes right out the window. And I know what they said. They said, well, there was another case we looked at, and it proved that it was an image artifact with the actual triangle shape. Maybe it is, but to jump to a conclusion, expect Knapp and Corbell to say, well, the classified report that we saw was wrong. I just think it's premature on that.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. To me, that's what's frustrating, is that if there were, right, so then that reporting that would have to go to the government would include those statements from those sailors on the deck. And yet here we have a guy saying, we believe we'd solved. And so in a sense, he's ignoring, right, the subset of data of that larger incident. And that's, to me, is really frustrating, that he'll come out and almost make a positive statement that we've solved it. Yet, Corbell is saying, hey, I'm talking about guys who saw the thing, with their own eyes, yet that had to be in the report. And here we have this guy running the program saying it's been solved, and not saying, hey, we've been able to replicate it, but yet we do have other data that says in that particular case, it may or may not be, but in some cases we have been able to replicate it. They don't play that game. They're just like, if they can use any sort of way to say we've solved it, they're going to do that, which is, it's frustrating. It's not really the search for the truth. It's just about how can they frame their own narrative for the time being.
No, I agree 100%. I mean, I don't know what those guys, I don't know what Moultrie and Bray are thinking. I don't know, I know if you look at the FOIA document that Greenwald got about Bray, and you saw the redactions in there, it's like, I wanted them to ask, why are you guys redacting shapes? If you're convinced it's, if you're so convinced that it's not our technology, which Bray said, it's like we had two possible instances, but we're pretty sure it's not, then why are you redacting the shape of the objects?
Yeah,
that makes no sense to me.
Methods or anything like that. Like,
no.
all this stuff. It's a pilot taking a photo. Maybe if we're in a certain type of airspace, but it's just, I totally agree with what you're saying. It's
so yeah,
hey,
I'm ready to get some,
and we know it. That's the thing, right? We know as the public, it really is getting the ball's in our court, and we really have to figure out how to push the needle if we're going to force hearings like this to actually be substantiated. So on the one hand, there's really no one to fight with other than ourselves, and we just got to get organized and really keep pushing the ball.
And I agree with what you said earlier. I said it last night to somebody. I said that for the real, like, government progress will be slow. If we really want to make progress quicker, we need to have a billionaire fund an effort like OSAP. And when I mean like OSAP, I mean, investigate these cases with funding and just follow where the evidence leads, where what the witnesses say. That's all. Just don't put any limits on what you're expecting. And that's what OSAP was. And they got some really weird data that people have a hard time with, but it's like, that's what they reported. And if you see consistently things like that, and we have the funding, we can at least maybe have some attempt at trying to figure out what the heck we're dealing with. Maybe not. Maybe we also need government censors for some of the data, to see clear, because it's apparently hard to get shots of UAP. But I also have been told we have clear, besides what you hear publicly, privately, I hear from people, it's like, yeah, there's amazing data that you would not believe. So is that true? And if it is, will we ever get to see it? So yeah, I think a private effort is sorely needed.
Yeah.
Gotta get the funding.
Yeah. And it's funny, I have a friend of mine, we're trying to work on something like this where it wouldn't be billionaires. And it's like, we've got to figure out a way to like take things we do every day. Like, I'm going to give people an example. Like, there's a thing called the Brave browser, right? Which is a web browser, and you get paid for viewing ads, right? So it's a thing that we all do every day. We Google all that kind of stuff, but you get paid money for viewing ads, and you could take that money.
I know what you're talking about.
You could donate that money, right? And it can be up to like $200 a year, which is a huge amount of money that an individual can generate for doing something they're already doing. And then we create an organization. And if you have, think about it, you got a million people, which is nothing. There's 30 million people already using the Brave browser, making money. If you made $200 a year and you give $50 of that to some organization that we set up to really push this, I mean, we're talking about millions and millions of dollars that we could do. And that's just one thing. I mean, I think we've got to get organized as a community, whether it's using Amazon Prime to set up nonprofits and take our 0.5% that we spend. Like, there's so many little things that we could do that might feel like a lot to us, but if we collectively get our shit together as a community, we can create some organizations that could really push the needle. Because the key in all this is that you've got to have recurring annual revenue, right, to really create research projects that are going to move the needle. Like Galileo, he says he needs $100 million to basically put cameras on the tops of buildings to scour the earth. That's a ton of money. He's not going to get that unless we're not going to get there fast unless we come up with some way to fund that. And it's not about us digging into our pockets, right? That's never going to solve this. We've got to figure out a mechanism that takes the shit we do every day to fund things that we control, that's open source. I mean, that's kind of like been my approach, and I'm trying to figure out ways to do stuff like that.
I think we need to put you in charge of that, Greg.
Well, if we do another one of these, I'll report back and see what we can come up with. But I got a bunch of ideas. My background in finance, so I'm always trying to figure out how do we
we need that,
really move the needle here. Because I mean, listen, my personal opinion, it's the number one question in humanity, right? Are we alone? And what's our purpose, or where do we come from? And it's not going to be a single benefactor. I think that's the wrong way to do this. You know what I mean? I think it's got to be really a collective. If we could all be picking up nickels and dimes, and they're going to a place, and we've got 2 or 3 million people doing it, man, we could change the world with that kind of setup.
I agree, and I do agree. It's the most important subject in the history of mankind if we're being visited by something. And I appreciate you coming on here, because a lot of people do not want to show their face or their voice. So you're the only
I'm a
one
long time lurker, so I appreciate all the work you do. I think you do a terrific job, Joe. You're great for the community. So thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Greg. And we'll see you on the next live stream, maybe. Give me a shout out on Twitter so I know who you are. Yeah, give me a shout out on Twitter so I know who you are.
You got it for sure. Take care.
Remind me. All right. Talk to you later. Thanks. Bye. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. You guys don't have to do that if you want to. That's fine. But that's the least thing from my mind, because I've been so bad at keeping up on YouTube, decent at Twitter. If you guys have any questions on here and don't feel comfortable coming on, I mean, I know there's not more to say. I can go through my notes. I didn't want to jump in and comment too much. I'll just go through my notes really quick, see if anything I could, we started out UAP or real. We need to determine if they're a threat. Witnesses need to be respected and not looking at as kooks, and follow the facts where they lead. Of course, whenever I see follow the data or follow the facts, I immediately think of OSAP, and that's not what they were referring to, obviously. And Twitter is going to be active all day today. Yeah, Alejandro Rojas, that Moultrie and Bray are unaware of UAP events at nuclear facilities is concerning, but it's because they are aware. They're aware. Seems to be the most important issue at hand. I agree. How can they ensure safety if they are ignorant of the biggest threats and not educating themselves on these matters? I think they do know. I just think they don't want to go there. How could you be on the UAP task force and not really know about those events? Let me get this off. Yeah, I know people don't like speaking, but it's not easy for me to follow anything else right now. So just contact me on Twitter, and usually I'll see it and refer to who you are. Mention who you were. See, I think a lot of people are it's going to be a mixed bag, but most of the people are going to be like Gabby here, saying there's nothing to say about those hearings. It was Men in Black crap. I don't want to say the word because I already have problems getting my videos monetized with commercials. They always get flagged I don't know why though. Witchcraft is where the data leads. Definitely, there is definitely not esoteric, but there's definitely a spooky. I can't think of the word right now, but it's definitely a lot. It'll be very hard for people to take if we go down the road and it's more poltergeist and shadow beings and orbs, which was part of what they found in OSAP when they spent time with witnesses. They might not be officially aware, talking about the nuclear incidents, I believe. Remember when Lou kept saying they mostly studied events starting in 2004? True, but how could you? That's true. It's possible. It's possible they really don't know. Senor Hisso says, but they aren't allowed to mention those yet. I mean, those are the most sensitive incidents. You tell the American people, yes, we know that our missiles have been turned on and turned off by what appear to be UFOs. Nothing really to be worried about, though. Greg was a good contributor. I need more. Come on, folks. I want to hear your views. I want to hear people have a conversation. Yeah, they'll have more juicy tidbits in the closed section. I wouldn't be, but I would think it's more along the lines of adversarial tech and, drones. I don't think they're going to talk about the stuff we want to hear in the closed session, except maybe they'll be able to show more of those videos. I think possibly. Thanks, Joe. Or unless you were talking about yourself. The only thing worth mentioning was how particular, every time underwater objects or events were mentioned. Yeah, they didn't want to go there. That's closed session. Of course, they could say, yeah, well, those are our own objects and our own advanced technology testing. William Henry speaks the truth. He knows what's up with the phenomena. I listen to him. I'm not a big William Henry fan, but I have seen him in the past at UFO conferences. And I see KRN here, but I cannot connect you because it says device is not connected. So I don't know if you're using the wrong browser. So yeah, Rogers says the juicy bits behind closed doors. That's what we're trying to get past. Exactly. There are ways to get past that. I really want to see what Lou has to say, but I have not seen any tweets from him. Let's see. So Tom Rogan said that Tom Rogan works for the Washington Examiner. He said, Mike Gallagher hitting the third rail here. Moultrie says he's not aware of any official or contractual programs. Exactly what I was talking about. It stood out. Related, he spoke very carefully. Contractual programs related to UAPs post Blue Book. Moultrie hedges that he's speaking about official programs. Watch this space. Yeah, I mean, and then Ryan says, I was thinking that too. It's possible that those programs could intentionally be put into the unofficial category to evade detection. Is it possible? Yeah, of course. I mean, and then they can plausible deniability. Yeah, I don't know about those. I don't know about any official programs. Tom Rogan has downplayed crash retrievals in the past, and I know he's not talking crash retrievals. There are other programs that don't deal with crash retrievals, but for me, it's the holy grail, because retrievals of intact craft with bodies would be the end of the debate as far as something anomalous is here. What does Jeff have to say? I suspect future hearings, if we get them, hopefully we'll get them, may have Sean Kirkpatrick as a witness representing AOI MSG to answer the questions of Congress. And that person, I asked a few people if they thought he had the right clearances to actually go around to different government agencies and compel them to give up their data. The response back so far has been, don't know, or no response. So I don't know. The guy may be great. He's a physicist, but if he doesn't have the pull, if he doesn't have that oomph to compel them to share data, then we're not going to get more. They're not going to get more data, and we're not going to get more data. So that remains to be seen. But yeah, he would be. I'll check it out. Paul. I'm just trying to see if you guys have any more questions here. Stanton is spinning so fast in his grave, we could use him as some renewable energy source. I think Stanton would have had his expectations in check, and he would have been fine with this, and he would have had problems with it, as we all do. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I was saying. Incisive questioning to dig into the meat of the subject and know the history and know how they've operated in the past. Let's face it, we need Lou up there. It would be the hearing of the century, especially if they gave him a little more room to speak. And I think Lou can say more. He has not, because he has been threatened with losing his security clearance. So he hasn't shared all that he can. I think a lot of that will be in the book. It ain't over till there's a UFO in my garage and a gray in the casket. Yeah, that might not come around anytime soon, senor. Does anyone else find it odd that these beyond next generation technologies seem to be crashing here? If they're so advanced, why are there so many references to crashes? Well, number one, we don't even know if it's technology, and I'll explain. And I've talked about this on Twitter. So if you read John Keel, he talks about, give me a second. I just got to get a drink. Give me 1 minute. He always gets me good ratings. Cookie always gets me good ratings, right? He was not disappointed with that hearing, I'll tell you that. So anyway, it's not technology. If you read John Keel, one of his theories was whatever this is can create things out of thin air, whatever technology. It's not really technology. You could just almost like advanced 3D printing, super duper, just instant manifesting. So, and there are people who reported seeing inside these craft as they were flying, and there was really no technology to be seen. So it's like, it's created out of electromagnetic energy. It really isn't technology that we can reverse engineer. We'll be wasting our time for decades trying to do that, and we'll never be able to do it because it's really not technology. It's something to distract us. That's one of the theories. Make us think that they're extraterrestrial when they're really not. They're terrestrial. They're based here. And also, I don't know if they're vulnerable to certain technology. Maybe we can take them down. Don't know. I mean, Lou has alluded to that. EMP, electromagnetic pulse. And I don't think there's been that many crashes, but a decent amount. And who knows? Maybe they're crashing on purpose. Maybe they're trying to give us technology. Maybe they're trying to distract us. Maybe they're trying to deceive us, making us think they're extraterrestrial. There's so many possibilities. So if there are UFOs here, I don't think it's a stretch to think that some of them may have either landed, because there are, as Eric Davis has spoken about, landed technology, or crashed. For me, it's not that much of a stretch. If they're here, they're not going to be perfect. Just because they're that advanced doesn't mean they're 100% perfect. So, yeah, I mean, did Lonnie Zamora see humanoids, or did whatever this phenomena is imprint that, affect his perception to make him think that he saw beings? I mean, anybody who has seen beings, did they really see beings? Yeah, it's possible. I mean, I'm just throwing out other possibilities that Dr. Gary Nolan has talked about. If they can control what you see, then all bets are off. It's very difficult to decide what we're dealing with or figure out what we're dealing with, especially with abductions. And I know people have physical ailments from abductions with marks and scars. I mean, I can go as far, and I know it's a stretch. It's even to even talk about that with some people, but what if it depends? We don't know the motive. We don't know what's going on. Am I against abductions being a physical event in some cases? No, I'm not. It's just really hard to prove that. I don't know how we'll ever prove that. And that's so far down the line after what we heard today. Eric Davis has said all the superpowers have had their crashes. So some people don't believe him. I do trust Eric Davis when he talks about that stuff, but I still want to see the craft for myself. I want to see it by myself. UFOs could have one foot in the material world and one foot in the ether, or whatever you want to call it. It's a bit of an as above, so below type deal. I agree. I mean, that's why it's like they're very hesitant to call them flying objects. I mean, because they don't even know. Sometimes they're physical. Sometimes they appear that they're not physical. It's very complicated. That's why some of this I don't think is extraterrestrial. Then again, if something is that far advanced, an extraterrestrial race could come across as interdimensional to us. I mean, and they also could be using dimensions to travel from another planet. So it would just appear they're blinking in, but they're still from another planet. It's so many possibilities here. All right, Margaret, you want to talk about two faces on Mars? Okay, so tag me on Twitter. I will look at it. I've seen other things on Mars that are interesting. So just tag me on Twitter. Rendlesham was not brought up. I think they wanted to focus. Yeah, would have been nice to bring that up, but an hour and a half. I thought it was going to be 2 hours. So at least they brought up the Tic Tac and said it was unexplained. At least we have that, which was kind of nice. Didn't think they would even go there. Yeah, I mean, see, that's the positive angle. Some people will look at that. The video was not great, but they said it was unidentified. And it was fast. So that's a positive way to look at that. I don't think that was the Batman balloon. I really couldn't tell, though. So 100%, but I'm not sure what you're saying 100% to. So let me know again. If you guys comment on something that I commented on, just put it in your comment, because I'm trying to keep track of all of them. Yeah, the 1952, Battle of LA. Was it 1952? I mean, that's a good one, but I didn't think they were going to go there. 42. See, that's the best theory, in my opinion. But I don't know what theory you're referring to. What did I say? I can't remember what I said 2 minutes ago. I will give out the invite one more time. How long have we been going? 2.5 hours. I am not tired. I was when I got up, though. It's a little early here. Yeah, I would like to comment on your guys' comments, but I'm not really I have no context to what you're saying. I might have missed your original comment. What else is on Twitter? Yeah, let me get to your comments while they're here. Well said, Joe. Interplanetary civilization could be indistinguishable from interdimensional. I agree. I subscribe to the physical craft idea. Yeah, it's like it's a possibility, and I have heard this, that we're dealing with so many different origins, whether it's interdimensional, relatives of ours, time travel, extraterrestrials, Bigfoot. I mean, yeah, Bigfoot. Unfortunately, Bigfoot is a part of Close Encounters, no matter if people want to admit it or not. As much as that sucks from a credibility standpoint, people do report UFOs and poltergeists and Bigfoot and orbs and shadow beings when they have close encounters. For whatever reason, I have no idea why that happens. I think this was a good stepping stone for people totally new to the subject. Mentioning of Blue Book could lead you to Special Report 14, which Stanton Friedman always spoke about, reactor sightings and Hastings UFOs and nukes, and the Tic Tac. A lot of people still do not know about that case. I think Luis has another podcast interview tomorrow. Yes, calling all beings. So I'm sure he'll be giving his thoughts on the hearing. And I think he'll just say, I told people to lower their expectations. It was a bit disappointing, but this is the battle we have. They're going to try to pass a lot of this off as air clutter, but they gave a couple of, these are unknowns. So we do have that. Still, it's frustrating. I don't blame people for being frustrated. All right, Macron, you can email me at ufojoe11@aol.com. I'm also on Twitter. Here is my Twitter. You can tag me on Twitter. If you're not on Twitter, get on Twitter. It's not that hard. My Twitter it's my website, my blog. That's my Twitter. And I'm not trying to put my PayPal up there. I'm just saying that's my email, which does connect to my PayPal. So more. I'd love more conversations with somebody like Greg. Come on, folks, call in. You can use your audio. All the paranormal stuff comes after verification. Yeah, with the government, but with me, obviously, and us, that's more of my interest, because there's an obvious connection. What it means, I don't know. Yeah, I don't focus too much on Bigfoot. I mean, I read Jeffrey Meldrum's book, which is a great book, scientific, the best you'll find on Bigfoot. Ron Moorhood has the best alien evidence, has actual sounds of Bigfoot. Look up the Sierra sounds if you haven't heard about them. I have not heard about them. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, the turkey video is interesting, and people are like, those are beings in the window. Maybe. It's just not enough really to really move the needle. We need something clear as day during the day, something that cannot be dismissed as advanced technology. And then we need bodies. We need the bodies. Do I think we have bodies? I do. But as with all of this, I need to see it for myself. I missed the beginning of the stream. What do you think about the fact that Wilson Davis notes were mentioned at the hearing? In my opinion, it was a wow moment. Yeah, it takes a lot for me to say wow. That wasn't it, because I don't know if that guy just had a personal interest in it or somebody said, this is something you should talk about. I mean, they don't really know about it. So the fact that he got the documents into the record is great, but it's going to be forgotten about. So, but at least I can reference it a little bit now. So it was brought up, and I would like to know. And a lot of those folks I did not know. I wasn't aware of those folks, who they were beforehand. I'll have to look it up again. Yeah. Gordon Cooper's video would be amazing. He said it was a craft that came down, landed on the desert floor, had 3 legs, left a little imprint, sent the film off, and it disappeared. Never saw it again. I'm still pissed about the lie about no offset between Blue Book and ATIP. Yeah, that's a good. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, it's like, how do you not mention OSAP? But they may be connecting the two. I don't know if they were purposely not mentioning OSAP. They may be connecting OSAP and ATIP. Yes, it was a program. It was the program that had the $22 million. ATIP did not have $22 million. Lou says they had funding. I asked him about it. I asked if that would be in his book. He said yes. So let's see how much funding they had. And Lou says there are going to be surprises in his book that people are going to be like, wow, you sly dog, really? So I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm open to that. I want to see what's in his book. All right. I don't really know what that means, but what in our possession of bodies imply that this is a real physical objective phenomena. Bodies to me eliminates the holographic. Yeah, ideas. I don't think it's holographic. I think what I'm talking about is it can create something that at times can become physical. It's really hard to explain. Oh, I did not know that. I did not know that. Soon at noon. Oh, I thought you said soon. Noon. Yes, that will be good. Thank you very much for that, Jessica. There was an hour and a half video of the interview. I don't know what that is. I get a feeling we are the aliens. Well, one of my favorite theories, and it's, there's some anecdotal and remote viewing evidence that we whatever we are, came from another place, and Mars would be one of those places. So we could be the aliens. I think one aspect of the hearing that might have been Music and Truth, you want to call in, but it says your device is not connected. So I don't know what's going on there. If you're on the wrong browser, because I know Chrome works, been somewhat overlooked as the precedent that they are setting for taking the topic seriously with the establishment of AOI MSG. Also, they said the name will probably change, which a lot of people will be happy about. I don't know if you have other messages coming. Jeff said one of three. It's not just one phenomenon. Some people think, and I've said this plenty of times. I asked somebody if they thought it was one phenomena or multiple, and they said, we don't know. It's contradictory. The evidence contradicts itself, and it's a shit show. That was the direct quote. I do not know. That's the Admiral Wilson. I think that's, Giuliano's page. Any clues on the date for Lou's book? No, I don't. Hopefully by Christmas. It would be an amazing Christmas present. It could be both physical and non-physical. Alien bodies could just be vessels for consciousness if you buy into that. I agree. No options should be off the table, even though those are so far beyond what we saw today with the basics. All of us, I think, have thought about, possibilities like that, especially, and I am into the consciousness aspect of something non-physical, us surviving bodily death would be consciousness related, because people are always like, what's consciousness? I'm like, psychic abilities, that's consciousness. Life after death, reincarnation, but the possibility of that. My biggest problem with the ET hypothesis is the biological aspect of things. How are they surviving here with our current sun exposure, our gravity, probes, drones, or most likely? That's possible. Or they have protection. I don't know. Or they're from here. That's why you have a problem. That's why so many people don't think they're ET. Or their planet is like Earth. I mean, I don't know what the chances are that there's an exact replica of Earth with, the same atmosphere. Possible. I don't know. Let's see. I'm looking forward to Lou on CNN. I think he'll be positive. I don't think he'll be too negative. Would love to call in, Joe, but officially I'm at work. Just talk quietly. Keep up the great work, though. You are a real weather vane for this whole thing. Yeah, I don't know if I'm a weather vane. Speaking of weather vanes, when I was doing remote viewing, it was one of my one of the targets I got had a weather vane. I actually wrote down the word weather vane and pointed towards it, and then when I opened it up, it was like a weather vane was right in the middle. Kind of cool. How many times am I going to say The turkey video was a boat, maybe. Now you just destroyed all of the hopes of people who thought there were grays inside the alien UFO. I don't know what the turkey video is. It's fun to look at. There's absolutely no possible way to figure it out. That's why we need something daylight. Something daylight. And even then, there are going to be people that are saying it's black technology. So people, and now we're getting into more consciousness. People are also vessels for consciousness. It's enough to recall the astral projection used for the purposes of remote vision. I had this tape that a neurologist from Hawaii gave me, who I met back in the Ed Dames remote viewing group. It was an online message board, and he gave me a tape to help you get out of body. And it's supposed to get you to the vibrational stage, and it worked. It got me to the vibrational stage. Like the first couple of times, I got scared. I stopped using it, and then I lost the tape. And I mean, he's in Hawaii still. I just need to see if he has it, because it was the most effective thing for me to get to that. If you believe in that, before you go out of body, or your soul can exit your physical body, you have this vibrational stage where you can't move. Some people think it's sleep paralysis, but anyway, I was able to get to that with the use of this tape. Why is it so hard to say yes or no to questions and say, due to safety of personnel, we can't say how we obtain the info due to classified programs? Listen, there are ways for us to show us better videos. The video they showed us, as much as it's great to hear them say it was unidentified, it's a kind of an embarrassment if that's the best you can show us without giving away sources and methods. Come on. These guys are shooting video with their cell phones because they're seeing it, like, we might as well try to document it. And it's not a great video, obviously. My favorite theory, and the one that makes the most sense to me, is that they are from here from a long time ago. And that may be the case. I do not discount that whatsoever. Or they may be here. They may be our relatives. They may be just something natural to this planet that are not human, and we're below them on the food chain. Which a lot of people would have a hard time accepting, especially if they use us for certain things, for their benefit. A lot of people would have a problem with that. I think accepting that possibility. Just trying to see anything else from you guys. Yeah, I mean, I don't even argue it. I know people don't think we have any PSI abilities, which basically remote viewing takes advantage of. It's not, the ability is it's the same ability as psychic ability. It's the same, whatever we have. I don't argue it. I have no doubt we have that ability. The question is, can we amplify it? Can we make it more accurate? And how does it work? He says, and you can make some real basic extrapolations from the fact that would lead one to the knowledge that our universe is way more interesting. Yes, and there's some data that comes from remote viewing that's amazing and controversial, like Courtney Brown and the Farsight Institute. But unless you get feedback, it's just interesting data. There's no proof. I mean, you could say, yeah, there are multiple ET civilizations who are here. Some of them want to help us, but they're waiting for us to reach out. And then there are other ones who take advantage of us, and the reptilians are bad. All of that. I'll listen. It's interesting, but I don't know if that's true or not. It may be total, just because 3 remote viewers come up with the same data, it doesn't mean it's true. And we had evidence of that back when in '96, when all of those remote viewers came up with the fact, quote unquote, that the Hale-Bopp comet had a giant spaceship next to it. Yeah, well, then people in what was the cult? Heaven's Gate. They all killed themselves because they wanted their souls to hitch a ride with the spaceship next to the comet. Okay, I will look on Twitter, Roger, the link to Cooper's interview. Psychics are not real. If you ever go to a psychic and you want to test if they're able to come up with information, this is what you need to do. Have the psychic turn their back on you and let the psychic do all of the talking. This way, they can't read your body language, they can't read your facial expressions, and they're not going off of your information. So just let them speak. And then when it's over, then ask your questions. And there are some psychics who come up with information there's absolutely no way they would know about. Same with mediums. I'm just not convinced mediums are talking to the dead, but I'm convinced some mediums can come up with information through something other than their 5 senses. And my stomach is growling now. When there's more evidence, more science and evidence on Secret of Skinwalker Ranch than the UAP congressional hearing, that says a lot about how much we're going to be told. Yeah, I think as far as the hearing, yes. As far as what kind of evidence they actually have, I think some of it would change the conversation forever. But we're not seeing it, so I don't know what that means, but I think you're joking. To Poseidon. Yeah, I don't know if is there an audio of that hearing? Or a transcript? It has to be. It was congressional. It was a congressional committee. Um, I will give out the link one more time. I need to put it on Twitter because I tried before and it did not work. So use that Twitter. Use that link if you last chance to call in. And then I'm going to take a break and get ready for Lou on CNN, which will probably be 4 minutes like they always do. I mean, I should go over what was said again. What did you think of the hearings? And let's see if I can actually put this up. And Lou will probably get 4 minutes. Like, so CNN has a multi-part documentary coming up this summer, which I really can't wait to see that one. But man, I cannot, for some reason, it won't let me tweet. That really is annoying. Oh well. You know, somebody gave me a document related to JFK and UFOs. It was just connecting, showing that the UFO JFK document was actually legit. And I didn't go there. I just left it alone. If let's just say, for argument's sake, JFK wanted to reveal the secrets of we were being visited, is that enough to kill him? There may be people who thought that secret was worth, killing somebody over. I don't know if his assassination was related to that. Of course, I've thought about it. Everybody has. Well, I wouldn't say everybody, but people in this community a lot of people have thought about that possibility. Keep kicking grass, Joe. As you know, this is a journey. Cheers, folks. Thanks for being here, Pix. Sorry if I missed some of your questions or comments. I want to I'll just go over again. They said follow the facts where they lead. Mentioned Jeremy Corbell. Did not have to say Corbel, like the lady last night on the news where Jeremy corrected her. Crawford was focused on Chinese and Russian hypersonic weapons and mentioned foreign adversaries, reduced the stigma. I talked about most of the most interesting things. I'm not going to go over all my notes again. I could do that in a tweet thread. I need to make my notes better because I was struggling to type. Tell us, where do you think the crashed UFOs are, in Lockheed Martin or the Department of Energy or CIA storages or DOD? And how many ships do you think crashed? I don't know. Lockheed, maybe in the past, maybe not now. Department of Energy, Eric Davis chimed in and said, no, they don't have materials. They just do testing and analysis when other folks bring them stuff. That's what he said. I have that somewhere. I've tweeted it before. CIA, in my opinion, and from what I've heard, does definitely know about crash retrievals. How many ships? I don't know. All I know is we allegedly have one intact craft, and we also that crashed and allegedly have one that landed. That was Kingman, Arizona. I tweeted about that. Really good source on that. Just one source. So yeah, I can never say I know. I have strong on Admiral Wilson documents. I as close as I can know to without being there in 2002, they met and Davis interviewed Admiral Wilson. Beyond that, it's just an educated opinion based on reading the notes and speaking to other people. The two people in the document. Well, it's Admiral Wilson, Eric Davis, and Will Miller. I'm friends with Will Miller and Eric Davis, and just like I said, no doubt the document is real. According to Watergate attorney Doug Caddy and E. Howard Hunt's deathbed confession, yes, I think that's talking about. See, I don't know what you're talking about. If you're talking about JFK and UFOs, I was joking about the alleged gods with a little g, Tom DeLonge. That might be around. I think he mentioned something similar to Greek gods. Yeah, he said they wanted to put that in his book as an addition. You know, something about the Greek gods were real. I have no idea. Were they feeding him misinformation? I don't know. How am I supposed to even? How are we supposed to prove that? Anyway, I don't know if you can hear my stomach growling, but I think I'm going to end it here. Let's see if anything else on Twitter. Let's see. I just don't think we're anywhere near discussing the Wilson document in a substantive way. I can't speak anymore. Substantive. I'm not saying it right. I've lost the ability to speak English. Yeah, so the signal has in the house. I am okay. Yeah, I mean, it came up. I was surprised, but I wasn't jumping up and down. I was smiling that somebody brought it up, but it's one person. You know, if we had a hearing on that and we brought in the folks who were in the special access programs to talk about their intact craft, then I would be very excited. The fact that it was brought up was really cool, but I'm not going to be, you know, spending the rest of my day just jumping up and down because it was brought up, because those guys, you know, they said that they didn't know anything about it. So yeah, Signal, it was nice to see it be brought up. Thanks for the chat. Sorry for my earlier French. I don't even remember what you said. Sorry. No offense to you. Once again, I expected nothing and I am still disappointed. And a lot of people are going to be like you. But to see Bob McGuire say that Lou and Mellon failed, I mean, give me a break. There's only so much they can do. You can't force this out. I mean, I guess Lou can always just blurt out what he knows and it would be covered and then forgotten about. And he might be in jail. I love that it came up, Wilson Davis, because suddenly more people are going to read it. I hope so. I mean, I'll send out links to my blog again and Giuliano's work, and Jay from Project Unity did great work. Dolan did great work on that. The two people who think it's bogus are John Greenwald, and Tim McMillan is more reserved. He said the meeting may have taken place, but the possibility remains that an Admiral Wilson imposter was in the car with Eric Davis, which it still makes me laugh, but and Greenwald thinks it was a movie script that Eric Davis wrote at the time X-Files had just gone off the air and they were looking for new shows, so Eric Davis decided to try his hand at writing movie scripts or TV scripts, which is preposterous, but whatever. Most people don't know about it. The people who have taken the time to read it are mixed. Some people believe it. I have been fortunate enough to have great sources on that, the best of anything I've ever looked into. So yes, they're legitimate. The question is, did Admiral Wilson tell Davis the truth? And was Admiral Wilson told the truth from the program manager when he went to go visit this program that they would not give him access to? Yeah, I agree. Lou and Mellon never failed. And nobody's failed. It's just a pause right now. Just lower your expectations and just be patient. It's going to take a long time. I mean, when Lou says 5 years for bodies, and he's not saying literally we're going to get information on bodies, but he's like, if you're looking for information on bodies, come back in 5 years. That's the timeline we're on. Slow. It's slow. The behind door stuff is going to be a disappointment too. Probably. I don't think it would be anything blockbuster. It'd be more just, you know, showing them maybe some more videos, but you know, these folks aren't totally brand new to this subject. So I'm not sure what they're going to be talking about. You know, like Schiff has had his briefings before. What are they going to show him today? One thing we could take from the hearing, some of the questions involved events that dates before 2004. So they actually have to dig deeper in the past events. Eventually, yes. And that's where supposedly there's like a data warehouse that exists. I'm not talking about the OSAP data warehouse. I'm talking about what Jeremy Corbell has spoken about. Eric Davis has referenced it. So yeah, eventually that information is going to come out. The only question for me is, how old will I be when that comes out? When that information comes out, you know, will I be alive? I assume I'm going to be alive for a lot of it. Crash retrieval, you know, trotting out the craft and the bodies. I don't know about that. I lost track of the dog, damn it. slow for a reason. We have to acclimate people in the fact without them freaking out, slow and steady. I agree. Slow disclosure is fine, but this seemed a little glacial. The pace was like, yeah, today was just not fantastic, but it's not going to ruin my day. 52 years you've been following. That's amazing. Like I said, I saw Close Encounters in 78, or 77, but I wasn't into it until really hardcore into 96. And 87, 86, something around there. I read my first astral projection book, but I did not connect any of that to the phenomenon. I didn't even know what the phenomenon was. Yep, we've seen this before. Let's see if we can take it to the next level as we go on. Are they in closed session briefing Congress on new tech weapons? I don't think so, because they said, basically Bray said they've all but ruled out this being our technology. So if we're talking about UAP, I don't think, there are new tech weapons, I'm sure, but why bring that up in a hearing about UAP if you just said that, they've basically ruled that out with these particular incidents? That doesn't mean we don't have new technology in other places. It just makes no sense for me for them to test it where everybody could see it. And if it crashes, you're screwed. Yeah. A friend of mine always talks about what we're doing now is for our children. So hopefully that's not the case. I think we'll make progress quicker than that, but it's still going to take a while. We can hope that these, and my advice would be just learn as much as you can about this topic. And for me, that goes into the more related phenomena aspects to try to figure this out. And I don't think I can figure anything out. I can, maybe something will click in my head and I'll suggest something that makes sense, but and I do enjoy the search. People are like, well, the reason you do this because it's a mystery, and once the mystery is solved, you'll lose interest. It depends. Maybe they're right. As Gary Nolan said, he'd be very happy to go back to his regular life, and so would I. I like doing this, but it's hard to do both, live in the real world and then do this, because you always want to come home and get to the latest information or educate yourself on something from history and learn something new. There's always something new to learn. That's why I love about this subject. There's so many different directions we can go. We can hope that these hearings gain some mainstream media exposure at the very least, which might spur on further discussion, legitimize the topic to more outlets. 100%. We need these journalists to fight over this story. That's the only way. In multiple mainstream outlets fighting for the most information and 60 Minutes doing follow-ups, that's how we get more information out. Investigative reporters can get information. They just haven't put their efforts into this yet. I'm 40. I expect to be in the retirement age if it comes out. Yeah, I don't know what retirement is. I don't have any retirement planned. I can't retire. I think my Social Security is like so small because a lot of my jobs were, I shouldn't say that. A lot of my jobs were through my corporation, but I do not have as much Social Security as I would hope. So it may be able to pay part of my rent. Maybe a low rent place, like $1,200. I think it's $1,200 a month if I worked till 65. After disclosure, the real work begins. It depends on what you mean by disclosure, but if they admit and we have 100% evidence that these are not us, then yeah. And then if we figure out who they are, we got to figure out how to work with them. We want to find out what their intent is. What their intent is, what they think of us. Do they think of us as some lowly, unintelligent animal? I don't know a link for CNN Canada. Just go on live stream, Google live stream CNN. You probably will be able to find a link that shows you CNN for free. So we need more people like Ross, and people who have a background in investigative journalism. We have George Knapp, but that's not enough. We need the people at the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, the regular people at the New York Times who, I'm not talking about Leslie, Ralph, and Helene Cooper. Those folks just still not make fun of the UFO topic, but they kind of disregard it in their articles. Julian Barnes talking about Avril Haines when she said, extraterrestrial. He was saying, well, she didn't mean extraterrestrial. She meant she meant meteors and stuff like that. I'm like, that's nonsense. Who is your source? He never told us what his source was for that. He responded to me on Twitter and said the reporting is accurate. I'm like, where'd you get it from? Is it an anonymous source? He wouldn't even say if it was an anonymous source or, you know, a DOD source, anything. So I'm sorry, I do not trust him, and I am not that conspiratorial. 401, yeah. Good luck to me on that. I do not have that. Whatever, I will figure it out. I will move to the moon if I have to, and I will get a nice little small apartment in the airless atmosphere, the airless world of the moon. Now I'm rambling on now. Yep. Ross's book is excellent. I interviewed him on my channel. You can find that interview. I have massive notes on that book. I read it with the intention of also interviewing him. And I met Ross 2 years ago when I was investigating the Wilson Davis document, and he helped me a lot because during my blog writing, I was skeptical of it, especially when Wilson came out with his last denial. But I learned a lot of stuff since then, and Ross helped me along the way. So yeah, Ross's book, you'll enjoy Ross's book, but Skinwalkers at the Pentagon is better because for me, it opens the door to what we might be dealing with, at least one aspect of it. Okay. I'm going to eat something before CNN. I really appreciate you guys being here because I know there was a lot of possibilities and options for you. And we had a decent crowd here. Probably some people who stumbled upon it on YouTube who don't even know who I am. You're welcome. I am the Uncle UFO Joe. Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, everybody else. Sorry it wasn't exciting. I will try to see if I get any feedback on any of this, and especially if Kirkpatrick turns out to be the guy we really need leading the Astro. Just change it back to Astro. Very simple. It's funny that they brought up the name. It's like, is that a public relations thing to calm us down? Not that I really personally don't care about the name, but, you know, Astro's fine. All right. I will see you guys the next time, which I don't know when that will be. And I appreciate the support and the comments and Greg who called in. And I'll see you on Twitter. If you're not on Twitter, just force yourself to go on and just follow me. I mean, there are other great people to follow, but I know people think Twitter is a nightmare and a minefield, and it's really not that bad. I mean, you have skeptics who, in my opinion, are not really being honest with themselves. Like, I don't even want to mention names, but I just disagree with them, and they're just trying to tear down this effort, and I really don't want to go there. But even then, somebody saying something that you don't agree with, even if you totally disagree with them, should not keep you from being on Twitter. I mean, there are some trolls, but it's really not that bad. I mean, people make it out to be horrible. There's some things that yesterday that was said, and it bothers people, but you should go on there, follow. If you start following me, you'll see it's pretty easy who you want to follow between Lou, Mellon, Ross Coulthard, George Knapp, Corbell, other folks, friends of mine. The list is long. So yeah, Twitter is worth it. I'm so glad I focused on Twitter and not Facebook. No offense to my friends on Facebook, but I just saw Twitter as a more open way of communicating with people, and it's really becoming popular. And I hope if Elon Musk does follow through on his purchase, that he can make it better. I mean, I don't care who he brings back. If there are people that are spouting stuff that really bothers me, I can always mute them. It's not that big of a deal. All right, Roger. Thanks, guys, again. Look forward to the Lou being on CNN in 10 minutes. Talk soon.